There were some government documents, and in those documents, there had been reports of banging sounds coming every 30 minutes.
A Ukrainian military spokesman has reported what appear to be incremental gains in the Zaporizhia region during the army's offensive against Russian forces. He said there had been partial success in settlements near Orikhiv, Malatomachka and Robotina. He also said Russian forces were trying to take ground in parts of the eastern region of Donetsk, including near Liman, where he said they'd been repelled in especially heavy fighting. The claims have not been verified. Meanwhile, the Russian Defense Ministry says it's shot down a number of Ukrainian drones in the Moscow region. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has told the BBC that progress in its counteroffensive had been slower than desired, but he stressed it wasn't a Hollywood movie and expressed confidence in its ultimate success.
Not everything is easy. There are certain difficulties because, first of all, our land is mined. We would definitely like to make bigger steps that are a bit smaller than we want. But nevertheless, those who fight shall win. That's why, by all means, we have confidence in the success of the counter-offensive actions.
President Zelensky has urged those attending an international conference on rebuilding Ukraine to aim for the country's transformation, not just its reconstruction. He said plans needed to include measures to tackle corruption and reform of the judiciary to make Ukraine attractive for investment. Political and business leaders are meeting in London to discuss Ukraine's reconstruction. The British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak gave assurances that the UK and its allies would keep supporting Ukraine.
We will stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes for them to continue and to win this war. We'll also stand with them as they win the peace and harness all of that ingenuity and defiance to build the future that they deserve. The question for us today is, what can we do to support this, to fast-track recovery and help Ukraine unleash its potential?
BBC News. China has reacted angrily to comments made by President Biden likening his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping, to dictators. Mr. Biden had said that Mr. Xi, like all dictators who are unaware of events they would expect to control, was angry and embarrassed at not knowing about a Chinese balloon shot down over the US in February. Here's Stephen McDonnell.
Just a day after US Secretary of State Antony Blinken left Beijing on a trip designed to stabilise Sino-US relations, the world's superpowers were again exchanging barbs. At a fundraising event in California, US President Joe Biden equated China's leader Xi Jinping with other dictators. Ironically, he used the expression while downplaying the recent spy balloon crisis. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning said today that these remarks were an open political provocation which violated etiquette and China's political dignity. She said the idea that Xi Jinping was a dictator was absurd.
Reports from Sudan say fighting has broken out in all parts of the capital just before a 3-day ceasefire expired early in the morning. Witnesses say the Sudanese army and the rival Rapid Support Forces clashed in Khartoum. There are also reports of anti-aircraft fire in Omdurman. Israeli settlers have attacked residents and set fire to olive groves and cars in several Palestinian towns and villages in the occupied West Bank in revenge for the killing of 4 Israelis on Tuesday. The 2 Palestinian gunmen who carried out the attack near a settlement in the West Bank were killed. The United Nations has urged the ASEAN bloc of Southeast Asian nations to consider new measures to hold Myanmar's ruling junta to account. The UN Special Rapporteur on Myanmar, Tom Andrews, said ASEAN members should seek alternative options to resolve the crisis sparked by a military coup. That's the latest world news from the BBC.
You're listening to the documentary from the BBC World Service.
The lines are pointing downwards, whereas the UK chart unfortunately continues to push higher.
When you look at that global comparison, Liz, I mean, a lot of the inflation that we're seeing here in the UK is being put down to the tightness in the labour market. What sort of levels of wage inflation are we seeing in the US and across Europe?
Definitely slowing down. I mean, much slower. I think for context, the UK wage number was 7.6% in the most recent reading. Private sector regular pay in the US, it's more like in the fours. Eurozone potentially even kind of lower than that. But there are different factors, and in some ways, this is a problem of success that the UK has. The UK economy in the 3 months to April created 250,000 jobs. That came as a surprise to me. It wasn't what the surveys were suggesting, but it does show that demand in this country is still pretty strong, as well as that constrained supply picture. So for the UK, it feels like everything that countries around the world are struggling on is just a little bit amplified, whether it's weak labour supply, strong labour demand, poor productivity, all these things. It just feels like it's a little bit more intense here in the UK, and the result is that very high inflation number.
So where does this leave the MPC tomorrow? Do they go for the quarter point hike, or do they go for the sort of full fat half a point?
Well, I think certainly a few members will be voting for the full fat half a point. I think we've as a base case put that 3 members would vote for that. But the issue is, will the governor and the deputy governors, the kind of internal members of the committee, also have seen this inflation number? And we know they saw it on Monday, so they had a bit of time to process. And said, actually, do you know what? 25 isn't going to be enough. We do need to go further. This is the 4th consecutive month where inflation has surprised to the upside, right? Economists have gone, all right, inflation's a bit higher now, so we'll forecast a high number. But even relative to those forecasts, it's come in higher. So has the BOE reconsidered? I think there's a lot of pressure on them. We just saw Jeremy Hunt saying, we'll back the BOE to do whatever it takes to bring inflation back down. So that's one thing. It's interesting that the market, though, is still pricing a relatively low chance that they do go to half a point tomorrow. And perhaps that's because the Bank of England historically has proceeded in a much more cautious fashion. So it's really hard to call. I think there are good arguments on both sides, but certainly on the back of this number, the risks of a larger move have certainly risen.
Liz, what about the terminal rate, where rates peak in this monetary tightening cycle? What's your thinking on that now?
So our forecast is 525. Clearly, as your colleague just mentioned, the market's gone further and predicting now the 6% mark. It is possible, of course, that they do have to go higher still. I think all the way through this cycle, we've predicted one thing, and inflation has continued to surprise to the upside, and we've had to revise higher those forecasts for the end game. Ultimately, for the BOE to stop hiking, they need to see some evidence that their prediction of a fall back in core inflation and services inflation is coming good. And so far, all the evidence is very kind of soft. It's not hard evidence. Things like the surveys suggesting that the pressure in the labour market is easing. It's not enough. They need to see that pay growth coming down. They need to start seeing, core inflation easing off. It doesn't have to get all the way back down to target, but it has to look like it's at least moving in the right direction. And if it's not doing that by September, when we forecast our final rate rise, then clearly risks that they have to continue and do more. And certainly, unlike some, I think we're not expecting any cuts, either this year or next. I don't think inflation is going to allow them to do that.
Oh, crikey, Liz, you're going to have the viewers throwing themselves off the window ledges at this rate. Good to see you this morning. Thank you.
You too.
Now, today sees the start of the 2023 Ukraine Recovery Conference, which is bringing together members of the international community to mobilise support for the rebuilding of the country. In the last hour, the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced a major financial package for Ukraine, including $3 billion worth of loan guarantees. Well, there's already been plenty of short-term emergency assistance for Ukraine, but broader support from the private sector and financial institutions is going to be needed to support longer-term reconstruction. I've been speaking with Anna Beard, Managing Director for Operations at the World Bank.
The World Bank has provided significant support to Ukraine. I'll speak, we're a World Bank group. I'll speak on behalf of the World Bank here, where I'm Managing Director for Operations. So since the war started, we have mobilized about $25 billion for Ukraine, of which we have dispersed, meaning executed, about $23 billion. So funds that have been received in Ukraine by Ukraine. And we have really focused since the start of the war on financing the essential social expenditures of the budget, but are now also moving into financing what we call repair and recovery projects in sectors such as energy, transport, agriculture, housing, as well as health and health services.
What about the total bill for repairing and rebuilding Ukraine's economy? I've seen figures as high as $400 billion circulating. Is it possible to get a handle on it?
Yes, so the last estimate that we did in our rapid damage and needs assessment indeed put the reconstruction needs of Ukraine at $411 billion, which is a sort of estimate spanning a 10-year reconstruction period. But to make it more meaningful, what we also did was actually estimate priority needs for the next 12 months. And that number is 14 billion, where we would very much like to see these funds deployed for priority repair and recovery projects in the country.
And when you're looking at the kind of work that needs to be done, obviously the situation is changing very fast. I mean, for example, the Kakhovka hydroelectric dam has just been blown up by the Russians. Presumably that was something that wouldn't necessarily have been factored into previous estimates.
Yes, indeed, Ian. Things are dynamic. So we will be updating our rapid damage and needs assessment again at the end of this calendar year, coming out in early 24 with a new number. But in the meantime, when we have incidents like the Kakhovka Dam or in the fall when the energy infrastructure was targeted, we also do continuously rapid damage and needs assessments. And we have actually just completed an estimate, a very rapid estimate of the dam that we will be discussing over the next few days.
You've also been doing some work into the impact of the war on Ukraine's private sector. Tell me about that.
Yes. So we just did a firm survey, which actually showed some very interesting results. We surveyed about 2,000 domestic firms and about 80 or so multinational companies. And what we found, of course, companies have suffered revenue loss, employment changes. But what we found was actually quite encouraging, which is that about 4 out of 5 companies have stayed operating during the war, and that's about 80%. And only about 4% of firms have completely shut down. So this actually is very encouraging for us. Of course, they've had to adapt significantly. They've changed product mix. They've relied on ICT. They have relocated within the country towards the west of the country. But overall, we're actually quite encouraged because it means that there's resilience also at the firm level in Ukraine.
And those companies that are staying to do business in Ukraine, I presume that a lot of them are from countries which are supporters of Ukraine, the EU, the United States and so forth. What about those countries that have been slightly more ambivalent, such as India and China, who, of course, continuing to buy Russian crude?
Yes, so of the firms that we surveyed, most of them, 2,000 in fact, are domestic firms. And I think the domestic private sector in Ukraine is very, very important because these are the smaller and medium-sized companies that also generate a lot of the employment in the country. Now, what we found was international firms that were active in Ukraine before the war are still very interested in staying engaged and have stayed engaged even though they've adapted and changed. So, of course, there's always concentration when you look at investments in the country, but overall, we find that the support for Ukraine is strong. Of course, there are always tensions. We are seeing them, geopolitical tensions. But on the survey of the firms, we're actually encouraged because the domestic private sector is important and the international companies are standing with Ukraine, of course, during the war, but also hoping for the opportunities that will come with recovery and full reconstruction.
Some other business news stories for you now. And the house builder Berkeley Group this morning criticised changes the government is proposing to make to the National Planning Policy Framework. The changes were part of a compromise agreed by the Housing Secretary Michael Gove last December to water down local housing targets following pressure from Conservative backbenchers. But Berkeley, which specialises in regeneration projects, said today the proposed changes would materially reduce the pace of delivery of new homes and said there was already evidence of that happening. The UK's second biggest house builder by stock market value was reporting a pre-tax profit of £604 million for the year to the end of April, up 9.5% on the previous 12 months, but it also warned that sales this year will be down a fifth. The drugs giant GSK said today that its vaccine for respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV, had proved effective in providing longer-term protection. Recent trials for patients aged 60 or older. The vaccine, called Arexvy, was approved for medical use in the United States and the EU last month, and it's the first RSV vaccine for older adults to be approved anywhere in the world. GSK said today the shot had shown itself capable of providing protection over 2 full seasons. RSV results in the hospitalisation of 177,000 people aged over the 65 in the US alone each year, around 14,000 of whom are killed by the virus. And Halfords has reported a big drop in annual profits as consumers reined in spending in response to the cost of living crisis. Underlying pre-tax profits for the year to the end of March came in at £51.5 million. That was down 43% on the previous 12 months. Graham Stapleton, the chief executive, said like-for-like cycling sales were down nearly 11% on the previous 12 months, although motoring sales were up 4%. I can tell you, shares of Halfords are ahead by 5% right now, and that is on assurances that profits are going to be higher this year. Well, the pound has seen some very interesting movements this morning following the higher than anticipated inflation data. Sterling briefly jumped on the figure, but they'll fell back on concerns at what another big interest rate rise might do to the economy. The pound now off nearly 0.2% against the US dollar, and it's off by a similar amount against the euro. The single currency, meanwhile, unchanged against the dollar. On the equity markets, Wall Street's declines last night were followed by mixed trade in the Asia-Pacific region. Only the turbocharged Nikkei in Tokyo was ahead of the major indices in the region. In Europe, stocks have been pretty mixed this morning. Here's the current picture. Actually, only the CAC 40 in Paris now in negative territory. Talking points this morning include Lufthansa. The shares there up by some 1.5% in Frankfurt. And that was after the airline sold its payment subsidiary to the Swedish bank SEB for 450 million euros. Well, here in London, the FTSE 100 is more or less unchanged right now. It hit a 3-week low earlier on this morning on the back of the inflation data. There are not a terribly high number of features for traders to hang their hats on this morning, but all of the house builders are lower on the comments from Barclays Group. There you go, Barclays itself off nearly 2.25%. There's a bit more going on among the mid-caps today outside the FTSE. Alpha Financial, the shares ahead by just over 5%. That's after it agreed to a takeover by the private equity firm EQT, valuing it at just over £614 million. Meanwhile, the online beauty products retailer THG, the Hut Group, shares ahead there by some 3% as it forecast a rise in half-year profits. To the downside, the asset manager Lion Trust, you'll recall we've had the CEO of that company on the programme in the recent past. It's off by some 2.25% after reporting a drop in annual profits. Meanwhile, the wealth manager Rathbones, its shares are off by 5.75%. That is on adverse broker comment. As for the oil price, well, it rallied earlier on in the session, more or less unchanged right now. A barrel of Brent crude will currently set you back $75.91 a barrel. As I say, more or less unchanged. Joining me now is Rachel Winter, partner at Gillick & Co. Rachel, good to see you this morning. Obviously, inflation numbers disappointing. I was quite baffled by what the pound did. I mean, the pound has always gone higher on these inflation numbers, but it's come off a bit this morning.
It has. So the inflation number was disappointing. We didn't see the drop in inflation that we hoped for, and that means that interest rates are likely to go up tomorrow. Normally, that would be good news for the pound because money tends to follow higher interest rates. But the fact that inflation is high and the fact that government debt was higher than expected, I think has damaged confidence in the UK economy. Potentially, that's why the pound's been a bit volatile this morning.
Yeah, I mean, the public finances, a lot of that is down to interest payments, which reflect the fact that a proportion of debt interest payments are linked to inflation.
Exactly. So about 25% of UK government debt is linked to the RPI rate of inflation, which is very high. It's over 11% at the moment. So that really is a concern.
There was also some big pay rises pushed through in May. I think there was a big NHS thing. That looks like it's contributed to the number being slightly higher than expected.
It does. So the government borrowing for May was £20 billion, which was higher than expected. And the reason given was that wages have gone up.
What about corporate features today? Barclays Group, obviously the biggest of the companies reporting today. I mean, I thought the results were a bit of a mixed bag, really, you could say.
I thought the results were not bad. I thought they were actually quite good. They were in line with the guidance that was given last December. But I think no one's really looking at those numbers. They're just thinking, what's this company going to do in the future? And that really depends on interest rates. And if interest rates are going up, that's bad news for house builders. That's really going to hit demand for houses.
Yeah, I thought there was an interesting line in their statement. They haven't bought any land. They've not added to their land holdings.
Yeah, so they've said they've been very cautious. They've bought a lot of land over the last decade, so they probably have enough to be getting on with. But they are expecting less demand, so that means they'll need less land in the future, sadly.
What about Halfords? I mean, they had three different iterations of the profit number and comparisons going all the way back to pre-COVID. I mean, it was hard to make sense of them almost.
It was. So profits clearly down a lot compared to last year, but still profitable, which is a good thing. I think the results were better than expected because the shares are quite heavily up this morning. I think what's quite interesting is how the divisions of the company have changed over the last few years. So during COVID, we had this massive boom in cycling and a lack of demand for anything car-related. And now we've got the opposite. So cycling and discretionary spend are really dropping off, but people are trying to hold on to their older cars for longer, and that's good for the service-related bit of Halfords.
And we must talk about the Hut Group. And, for once, they don't seem to have disappointed investors.
No, I think that the profits were better than expected, but I think what's really got investors excited is the corporate governance issue. So there has been some concern about this golden share that the founder had that gave him extra special votes. This morning it has been announced that he's got rid of that. And that potentially means the company could be more open to a takeover.
Yeah, big news that. Rachel, got to leave it there, I'm afraid. Good to see you this morning. Thank you. Still to come here on Ian King Live. Why managing the monthly payroll is big business. Don't go away.
Well, there was a shortage of pathologists prior to COVID, an ageing population of existing pathologists, but it's not a national problem, it's an international problem. So you can't just go and recruit pathologists from other countries, and it takes about 10 years to train a junior up to consultant level. We have changed the conventional way that we do pathology. Traditionally, you'd look through a microscope at some slides to try and look for changes in structure, to identify cause and effect in diseases. And what we've been able to do over the past few years is take that slide image, put it on the cloud, allow any doctor anywhere in the world that is qualified to be able to provide a diagnosis. The add-on from that is artificial intelligence. You can now have that image analysed by an algorithm for either primary or secondary read. So primary read, it will assist the pathologist in being able to provide the diagnosis by highlighting key areas that build up the characteristics of a cancer data set. And so rather than the pathologist having to actually identify on the slide where these characteristics are, the algorithm will display them directly. The second way is through a second read, so quality assurance to mitigate misdiagnosis. As every single cancer is diagnosed, you can have the algorithms working in the background to quality check and assist the doctor and provide an audit of cases that have already been reported. So I think the biggest problem is the infrastructure costs. So you'll need to get IT lines into the hospitals because each image is around 500 megabytes. You'll need cloud infrastructure, you'll need servers for archiving of images to come back to them in the future. And then you'll need communication between the various pieces of software that the NHS use. There's not one singular software that each hospital uses. So you'll need different laboratory information management systems, talking to imaging systems, talking to different AI providers. And so the costs will add up.
Welcome back. Now, running the monthly payroll is one of the most complicated but important tasks any business faces. It's also time-consuming. Research suggests HR and finance professionals spend an average of nearly 5 days a month on managing payroll. Supporting employers in that task is big business, with the likes of the FTSE 100 member Sage among the major players. Well, the latest to join the field here is San Francisco-based Rippling, which after its latest funding round was valued at $11.5 billion. It's just opened offices in London and Dublin, and I've been speaking with its founder and chief executive, Parker Conrad.
Rippling is basically an all-in-one system to manage your employees. So think, payroll, HR, things like annual leaves, pensions, as well as some other stuff like managing sort of IT and device security, shipping new joiners their computers, expense reimbursements, and things like that.
And what sort of revenues are you targeting?
In the UK specifically, we're just getting started. So we have a core group of about 24 people or so, and plan to roughly triple the headcount over the next year.
How do you think the markets are going to differ from the United States?
It's interesting. I think that there's one of the things we found is that there's in some ways an even bigger administrative burden on UK companies than what we see in the United States. In the UK, people spend an enormous amount of time just dealing with payroll for their businesses because all of these systems are disconnected. So you've got to manage data often from spreadsheets, sometimes from an HRIS system to get it into payroll. You've got, other things to deal with like annual leaves and then bank files you need to transfer your bank. Rippling, that's all one system. So you just go in, everything's pre-calculated for you. You click a button and the money's off. You don't even have to deal with the banking system.
You're going to have a lot of HR and finance professionals looking anxiously over their shoulder at this rate.
I don't think so, because I think that look, no one likes to be spending their time on administrative work. There's a lot that people could be doing, real HR focused on sort of, making the business more effective rather than, dealing with payroll bank files. Who wants to spend their time on that?
We've just had obviously a quite prominent hacking incident involving payroll software. Cybersecurity must be a massive priority for you.
It's absolutely critical. It's existential for a business like ours. One of the interesting things is that Rippling, because of our sort of slightly broader mandate, because we spend a lot of time managing employees and back office functions more broadly than HR in IT as well, we think of ourselves as a security company first and foremost. And so we do what's traditionally called identity software, things like single sign-on and managing users and different apps that you use for your company, device management and security software on devices, on laptops and things like that. So we've got sort of a deep background in the security space in addition to the payroll and HR one.
Now, you raised $500 million back in March as a Series E funding round. I mean, that was around the time of Silicon Valley Bank's collapse. You had a lot of money on deposit there, I gather.
We did, yeah. So we most of our banking rails in the United States were moving through Silicon Valley Bank at the time that they went under. And so what happened is, I woke up one Friday morning and discovered that it was payday, and discovered that a lot of these funds were frozen in receivership at Silicon Valley Bank. And so we made a sort of a very snap and sort of somewhat risky decision that we were going to sort of, to make sure that people got paid, we were going to wire about $130 million of our own company money over to JP Morgan Chase to make sure that funds went out the door, because the actual payroll funds for these companies were stuck at SVB. And so we fronted a lot of the capital as part of that to make sure that we would sort of be able to backstop that. We did a very quick fundraising round, called up some investors that had wanted to invest in Rippling for a long time, and negotiated it in just a few hours and got the round closed that weekend. And of course, over the course of the weekend, the FDIC announced that they would make all depositors whole, and so it ended up not being necessary, but we were prepared just in case.
So that means you've actually got a bit more capital probably than you were looking for at that time.
We do. The business is extremely well funded. We've got about $1 billion of capital on hand.
Well, so SVB, was it a matter of life and death for you? Because it sounds like you were going to be able to make payroll anyway, regardless.
I don't think it was necessarily a matter of life and death, but we felt very strongly that although the SVB collapse was not our fault, it was definitely our responsibility to ensure that everyone got paid. And so in the United States, the way this works is that companies send payroll funds to their payroll company, in this case us, a few days ahead of payday. And then we then send the money on to employees and to various tax agencies and government authorities. And so there's this window where we're actually in possession of the payroll funds. And that was when SVB went under, there was money that was sort of in flight. And that was what we wanted to make sure that we would be able to, we wanted to make sure that money went out to hundreds of thousands of employees around the States.
Fascinating conversation that I'm sure we'll be hearing from him again. Well, still to come here on Ian King Live, I'm going to be joined by the Chief Executive of the financial services giant, Raymond James. Don't go away.
Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination, or call 119 for free.
Hi guys, this is your friend Uruj from SendWave. SendWave is a money transfer app that is used by people all over the world to send money to their loved ones in Africa. With SendWave, you can send money to Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And the best part is, SendWave is absolutely commission free. Our exchange rates are excellent. You can see for yourself by checking them out on our website. So how do you use SendWave? SendWave is an app that you can download onto your phone from the App Store or Google Play Store. The app is free to download. After downloading it, just open the app and enter your name, email, and phone number. That's it. You're good to go. Make sure you use the promo code SR. S for Starr, R for Radio. This promo code will give you £5 free credit to send to Africa on your first transaction. Your money will be delivered to your recipient within seconds. Feel free to call me on 0749 7377 647 at any time. I'll be happy to tell you all about SendWave and help you in any way I can. Remember to use the promo code SR for £5 free credit. Medasse.
Hi everyone, it's your girl BB Clements, the author of How to Go From Employee to Entrepreneur and the host of your weekly business show, BB Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Are you looking for the fastest, reliable, and trustworthy door-to-door shipment company? Well, look no further. When was the last time your family received a shipment back in Ghana on time and intact? You are not sure? Well, Lamb Shippers, we pride ourselves with being the fastest, reliable, and trustworthy shippers you can use. You are assured of a prompt pickup anywhere in the UK by our personnel. They also make sure your items are well packaged to get to its destination intact. When it comes to door-to-door shipment, look no further. Well, Lamb Shippers, contact us on 07939009321 or 07498911820. Or you can visit our website www.welllamp.co.uk. You can also drop us a mail, info@welllamp@gmail.com. Well Lamp Shippers, fast, reliable, and trustworthy.
Hi, I'm Ada Williams and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination or call 119 for free.
Only the best music. The best radio show.
Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7.
Hi there, this is CJ Buckman, your life coach. And whenever I'm in London, I listen to Starr Radio UK right here. But guess what? You can listen to wherever you are.
Body is your man. Bekutu, show them you got the cocoa set. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Harrison, aka Mr. Songs. This is the Kingmaker Baba for the girls. We're here. This is Starr Radio. Don't go nowhere. UK, London. We they call them London for home. For here, we they call them London. And I sabi you know, just have fun and stay blessed.
All around the world. In your car.
At work.
At home.
On your smartphone.
This is Starr Radio UK. Are you ready to turn it up?
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, your heart is aching. Smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you get by. If you smile through your fear and sorrow, smile and maybe tomorrow you find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile. Hey, this is Archie, and you are listening to Starr Radio UK and the Morning Show.
This is Starr Radio. Starr Radio. This is Starr Radio UK. This is Starr Radio UK.
Welcome.
Broadcasting worldwide, online 24/7.
Enlighten your day with Starr Radio. Starr Radio. Radio for the people, by the people.
Love for you runs deep. All of you makes my heart beat. You make a doubt they fade, Jesus, and that's what makes you great. You hold the world in your hands, the hand that made me who I am. Same God now, yesterday, and forevermore. And that's what makes you great. You are God. You will never change. You remain the same till the end. Till the end.
Okay, let me say massive good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good dawn to you wherever you might be on planet Earth, and those of you on other planets as well. We want to salute each and every one of you and say once again, welcome to another edition of the morning show. Today is the 21st of June, the year 2023, with the time now 10:39 from the hearts of London, and it's the Starr Radio UK morning show. I remain yours sincerely, the one and only Archie, and wherever you are tuning to listen to me or us from, just keep your dial so logged on Starr.
This is Starr Radio UK.
But let me say good morning to my colleagues, Mr. Olayomi, Koiki, Mr. Frank Davids, Mr. Francis Guy, my able producer. Felix all the way in Aberdeen, massive good morning to you. I want to say morning to Kojo D as well. Kojo, I hope you are doing very, very well as well.
Hold the world in your hands, the hand that made me.
Well, of course, this is the Wednesday edition of the morning show, so you know that we kickstart the program and we are pressed with time and we need to run through everything like no man's business.
And that's what makes you.
But wherever you are, just stay glued to your sets. Don't even think of touching the dial.
You will never.
And as somebody will say, let's make merry. All right then.
Till the end. You are God. One who.
But let me say good morning to Bishop Adeshina, Olakunle, good morning. Anthony Adedeji, good morning to you. And a special good morning also goes to the one and only
Forever call you great.
Moyiwa and Sir Maxwell. All of you listening to us in the UAE, we salute you. Hope you're all doing good. In Australia, those of you watching us in South Africa, across the globe, we want to salute each and every one of you. Kamara David all the way in Minnesota, US of A, good morning to you. Abiose in New York, good morning to you all. And thank you very much for all your support, you all watching us. But do me a massive favor, share the broadcast with your friends and loved ones and invite them to like our pages.
Okay, so let's move on. Let's move on to the program outline for today. I'm going to bring you the quote for the day. The weather forecast will follow suit. Then the travel updates from thence. Then we'll continue from there. We'll have a look at some of the stories making the rounds across the globe. It's known as Global Trotting. Then at 11 o'clock, we have Miss Olayomi Koiki reporting live from number 10 Downing Street. We'll continue our conversation from there. He will be bringing you all the updates from Nigeria from there. After that, we'll go around, quickly have a look at some of the stories making the rounds. And then at 12 o'clock, we take you to the House of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time. So in that case, that's what's going to happen today. So wherever you are, don't tag the dial. Star Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. So let us make this an hour and an hour and 80 minutes count. All right. I remain yours sincerely, the one and only.
This is the morning show with Archie.
Okay, so kicking on or just hitting on, success is not a beauty contest where you have to outwit your competitor with prowess. Success is not a beauty contest where you have to outwit your competitor with prowess. So we're not talking about dressing or no, that's not it at all. So coming away from Star Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. I'm moving on straight to the weather front, telling you a bit about how the weather is going to or has got hope for this day. For those of you in London and southeast of England, this is how the weather is going to be for you. We're going to be seeing remaining largely dry this afternoon, despite the chance of some lingering areas of cloud and the possibility of the odd shower. Humid conditions are expected as well. Tonight will remain largely clear and dry with showers easing. These conditions will continue overnight with clear skies and light winds expected as well. When it comes to the temperature is going to be 15 degrees, the lower is going to be 14 degrees. Pollen level is going to be very high, UV level is going to be high, and pollution low. Sunset 21 and sunrise for tomorrow morning 04:43 hours. Brings us to the end of the weather forecast. Let's take a quick break, and once we come back, I'll bring you the travel updates. It's now 10:44 from the House of London, Star Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London.
Hi, I'm Ada Williams and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination or call 119 for free.
This is Starr Radio UK.
Okay, so keep your eyes on the roads, and we'll keep you navigated. I promise I'm on the Star Radio Travel Update. I come to where every weekday from 10:40. It's now 10:45. What is your travels like this morning? Well, when it comes to the underground this morning, I can tell you good service throughout. London Overground, good service. DLR, good service. But the London Tram Link has got part suspension, no service between New Addington and Lloyd's Park, while they fix a signal track fault at Combe Lane. Good service on all other routes though. And when we move on straight to the major routes in London, I can tell you shortly, apart from the central London routes that's got serious delays, all the others have got no exceptional delays. You can zoom through it like no man's business. But keep your eyes on the roads. Moving on straight to the riverbed this morning, I can tell you shortly, good service there as well. The London cable car is also running a very good service. And that brings us to the final segment of the travel update. That's the National Rail. So on the National Rail this morning, we got a Great Western Railway that's got minor delays. We got Island Line, minor delays, and London Northeastern Railway, minor delays there as well. But I think now you've got me, haven't you? So I will say it once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good dawn to you, wherever you might be on planet Earth. Enjoy your commute for today. But you know what? Continue to keep those eyes on the roads.
Hi, I'm Ada Williams and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination, or call 119 for free. Hi, I'm Ada Williams and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination, or call 119 for free.
This is the morning show with Archie.
Welcome back to the program. It is Starr Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London, bringing the time now to exactly 10:48. That's 12 minutes to the top of the hour. Yes, and let me say a special good morning to my own bluffo, Pastor Joyce Lawson. Good morning to you. I hope you are doing very well, and the family and all my little ones there. Shalom to you. All right then. So now let's move on to some of the other stories making the rounds. And as I did say, Mr. Olayomi Koiki will be joining in at 11 o'clock, reporting live from Downing Street, number 10 Downing Street, before the Prime Minister moves to the House of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time. But now, let's quickly go on Global Trotting. All right then. So, Atiku would emerge victorious at Presidential Tribunal. Bode George is saying, how? Where? Okay. All right then. And probe Nimasa Customs FIS merger is dangerous. Ex-Nimasa Director General is saying. We'll be telling you more about that once we have Mr. Olayomi Koiki. And then PEPC, Atiku Abubakar PDP, to close case against Tinubu's election tomorrow. And Hakim Odumusu clears air on appointment as EFCC chairman. And then Naira float affects states as external debt rises to 3 trillion naira. Okay, and then UN allocates $20 million to ramp up food security in Nigeria, and some other stories. Derrick canvasses review of PIA terms laws, time bomb, and you are disappointed. Oba of Benin tackles Buhari's minister Agba. Okay, more going to be coming your way. MFLA will flee if granted bail. DSS, OAGF tells court. Well, I tell you all the time, they will say that, and even if the court decides that, look, let's release him, they will say, we are not going to. As we've seen in the case of Nnamdi Kanu, and we've talked about it several times. But if you want to know more, you have to just keep your dial still logged on Starr Radio UK. My Bishop Adeshina, and all the guys in the RBS office, we salute each and every one of you. I hope you're all doing good. All right then. And then 10 Buhari ministers appointees President Tinubu must probe. Oh my, that's going to be a tough one. But we'll tell you more about all that. And then this evening as well, at 18 hours, we're going to be having Mr. Olayomi Koiki bringing you the Niger Voices. So you don't want to miss out on this. So because it's a Wednesday edition of the morning show, and we'll cramp everything on or in. But we'll tell you more. New service chiefs, 100 military generals may be retired. Well, let's see what happens. Has the government got the money to do so, to retire them? Nigeria electoral umpire INEC finally responds to subpoena issued by Peter Obi. Interesting one. Well, as their response or whatever they have presented, which was at the bequest of the Labour Party, bring about a difference in there. We'll be telling you more about all that in a moment, but wherever you are, don't touch the dial. In other countries, now Sudan, unless guns are silenced, exodus of people to continue. That's what the UN officials are warning when it comes to Sudan. In South Africa, Netherlands, Denmark launch Green Fund. It's one of the stories making the round. Sierra Leone president calls for peaceful vote ahead of Saturday's polls. And the Senegalese president says country committed to democratic values. In recent weeks, Dakar has seen deadly apologies, deadly crashes or clashes. My apologies, and that broke out between Senegalese police and supporters of opposition leader Ousmane Sonko after Sonko was sentenced to was found guilty and was has been sentenced to up to what is it 2 years imprisonment. But we'll see what happens. And Rwanda genocide forges Kaishima to seek asylum. Where we're going to be telling you more about it. In South Africa, well, will South Africa grant him asylum? Well, I think he's converted. He now has a book. It's a Jesus First. Interesting when people are perpetrating ill. But okay, now when it comes to Ghana as well, Akufo-Addo needs to revisit how rating agencies work. Professor Lord Mensah is saying, because the president is said to have said that, you know what, he reckons that these bodies, regulatory bodies or rating agencies are the ones who are casting doubt and painting Ghana black, and that is why they seem not to be getting funding from the international market. Well, is that true? Or is he being a bit naive? I mean, when they were in opposition, they were celebrating anytime Fish and all the others come out with their report that was, I mean, painting Ghana or the government performance bad. But well, when the boot is on the other foot, or the shoe is on the other foot, how does it feel? Okay then, well, when it comes to other parts of the world as well, more such help arrives at side of missing Titan sub after banging has been heard. We hope that they are found alive, because so far they got about almost 30 hours or a day's oxygen. So after that, then we're going to be having lots of problems there. But Zelensky admits slow progress in Ukraine offensive. Now speaking at the BBC, Ukraine leader stresses that the counter-offensive is not a Hollywood movie. So it's a tough one there. The Biden calls Z a dictator a day after Beijing talk. The US leader makes the remark just after talks aimed at easing tensions between the country. He's an old boy, man. He says whatever comes into his head. The Musk vows to bring Tesla to India after meeting Modi. The Indian Prime Minister met Mr. Musk on Tuesday during his 3-day visit to the US. All right then. So lots more going to be coming your way from there. Starr Radio UK. Hunter Biden has been charged with tax and gun offenses. I'll be telling you more about that and how that impacts the chances of the President Biden for his second term as the President of the United States of America. Whatever it is, we're going to be looking at that in a moment. But when it comes to the UK front, interest rates rise expected after inflation shock. Interest rates are expected to be raised on Thursday after figures reveal inflation did not fall in May. UK inflation stays at 8.7%. Now, British father is his son, an explorer among Mason. We've talked about that several times now. W.H. Smith and MNS and Argos failed to pay minimum wage. Wow. Okay. And thousands welcome summer solstice at Stonehenge. Now, some 10,000 people gather at the ancient site to mark the start of the longest day of the year, which is today. So today is the longest day of the year for those of us in the UK. Well, interestingly as well, UK sent mentally ill people back to Caribbean after the Windrush generation arrival here in the UK and everything that had gone on. But some are thinking that my, that was a kick in the teeth or in the gut. But well, we'll be telling you more about all that as the program unfolds. So wherever you are, stay tuned. 4 minutes to the top of the hour. Let's enjoy some music, and then we will be having Mr. Olayomi Koiki joining in to bring you the updates from Nigeria. And this time around, let's enjoy this song from Elijah, and he says, "Hallowed be your name." Enjoy, and I'll see you in a bit.
Glory to your name, Jesus. Aha! Put your hands together, come on! We worship you, Lord. We open hands say, hallowed be your name. Whatever comes our way, we lift our voices and say, hallowed be. Sing it all around the world. Oh Lord, the one who is to come. We lift our voices and say, hallowed be your name. Dear Lord, the beginning and end.
This is Starr Radio UK.
We lift our voices and say,
all around the world.
with a grateful heart, come on, if you feel voice, say, Jesus, Jesus, you never fail. You never fail. You are just the same. The same. Yesterday, today. Take a look at me, the one you say. Oh Lord, hallowed be your name. Lift up your voices and say, Jesus, Jesus, you never fail. You will never fail. You are just the same. The same. Yesterday, today. Take a look at me, the one you say. Oh Lord, hallowed be. I can save you. Put your hands together, come on. Oh Lord, to the mighty God, to all the words that is to come. Come on, come on. Put your hands together. We worship you, Lord Jesus. Oh, we'll take that one more time now. With open hands, we say, wave your hands to him. We lift our voices and say, hallowed be your name. Dear Lord, no one, whatever comes our way, we lift our voices and say, hallowed be your name. Oh my, the one who is to come. Are you ready to meet him? We lift our voices and say, hallowed be your name. Oh dear Lord, the beginning and the end. We lift our voices and say, hallowed be your name. Say, lift up your voices and say, Jesus, Jesus, you never fail. You will never fail. You are just the same. Always the same, Lord. Yesterday, today. Oh Lord, take a look at me, the one you say. I know you have testimonies. Oh Lord, hallowed be. Sing to the great and mighty God. Lift up your voices and say, Jesus, Jesus, you never fail. You have never failed. You are just the same. Oh, just the same. Yesterday, what a beautiful Lord you are. Take a look at us. Look at me, the one you say. Oh Lord, hallowed be your name. All around the world, lift up your voices and say, Jesus, Jesus, you never fail. You will never fail. You are just the same. The same, Lord. Yesterday, today. Dear Lord, take a look at me, the one you say. Oh Lord, hallowed be your name. Yeah. Jesus, Jesus, you have never failed. You will never fail. You are just the same. My yesterdays and today. Take a look at us.
Well. It is Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. A minute after 11 the time. And as I did say earlier on, we're going to be having Mr. Olayomi Koiki reporting all live from 10 Downing Street once again. That's where it's going to be bringing you the updates from Nigeria from today. But I'm here in the studio to be the umpire or your captain. So if you are in wherever you are, depending on the weather, get yourself a hot or cold drink, whichever is appropriate, and let's take this journey. If you're standing, hold on to something and sit very comfortably, buckle up. It's going to get bumpy. The Benue State PDP backs Otum as EFCC grills ex-governor. Well, there was some other story I was looking for a moment ago. Now I couldn't find them. But I was talking about the fact that some people are advocating that the president Tinubu should probe some of some ministers of Buhari government. But it's all coming away from Starr Radio UK. We have Mr. Olayomi Koiki who has joined us all the way from number 10 Downing Street, where this morning he is, and we're going to be telling you more about what is going on in the UK, and then we'll be telling you what is happening in Nigeria as well, because inflation rate in the UK still remains at 8.7%, and people are crying. But hey, we are here to tell you exactly what is going on there. So let me first of all go to Yomi and say, Yomi, good morning to you. Good morning, Yomi. Hello, Yomi.
Well, it is a very good morning to you once again, Mr. Archie. Good morning to all our listeners, and I hope you can hear me.
Yes, loud and clear. Loud and clear. I can hear you.
A very good morning to you back in the studio. Good morning to all our listeners and viewers, and welcome once again to the Starr Radio UK network. As we are reporting this morning, it is the 21st day of the month of June 2023, and it is just coming up to 3 minutes past 11 o'clock this morning. And I'll come back again to you in the studio, Mr. Archie.
Yes, hope you're doing very well and your journey was okay.
Well, as usual, the journey was very good, apart from the weather, as you can tell, is a bit different from yesterday. But today seems to be a little bit much more warmer compared to yesterday. There was a little bit much of the rain all over the place.
Okay. We thank God that you arrived safely. All right, then let's crack on. I mean, just a quick one first from the UK front, because I know that you are at Downing Street, and the Prime Minister will be going to the Houses of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time, and this is going to be one of the areas that people are going to be looking at. Inflation rate still remains at 8.7%. which they thought that maybe it will drop a bit, and by so doing, then the interest rate might find its way coming down as well. But it looks like it's inevitable interest rate is going to be going up again. Yomi.
Well, you're quite right. The inflation rate continued to go as quickly as rising, and it's because of so many reasons for that. And I mean, yesterday, if you look at the paper yesterday, I've got today's paper with me, but looking at yesterday's paper, there was the focus of about almost £275 to the energy bill. Every household, will continue to experience, hike in the energy bill. I was actually, following, the Twitter of the Prime Minister, this morning, and they're trying everything to support, an average citizen in the country. But the question then is, what actually is making the inflation to go, rising? The mortgage, cost is going up, and most importantly, the food cost as well is going up as well. But I did pick up something, from the PMQ, this morning that I'm going to be telling you a little bit about. But one thing is, almost every part of the world is facing one difficulties or the other, especially because of the ongoing crisis that is happening, the instability. I was monitoring, the news this morning as well, where the farmers are complaining about the cost of producing the milk. I mean, almost every household in UK, needs, the milk. I mean, we've already used the milk this morning for those that are preparing the cereal. And as I said this morning, as I was making my way into number 10 Downing Street, I did meet someone, and I did ask him in his white van, what actually is in that van? And to be honest, he actually told me there is milk in there that needs for delivery. There was a lot of heavy traffic coming into number 10 this morning. Well, like I said, the UK government is putting in almost every effort to support as many people, back in the country, especially as the economy continue, to drive almost everywhere. Quite a lot of very busy. You'll be hearing the click of the cameras shows that, there's a lot of movement going in and to, I can tell you the motorcade, taking the Prime Minister is ready. And it seems that, we have, again, it's all about inflation. You can see, question being asked, no answer. Is actually going in. The door opens, and here we go. It's gone in until 12 o'clock, where everything goes back again inside, the Parliament. But for now, I come back again to you. This is still Star Radio UK, the finest African and Caribbean radio station in London.
Well, listeners, Mr. Olayomi Koiki at 10 Downing Street, where we are bringing you a live reportage and updates from Nigeria. But looking at the people that you met on the way, I mean, we'll just come to the updates from Nigeria in just a moment. But if you compare the interest rate, looking at the way people are going about their duties, you compare that to what is happening in Nigeria. How do you see? How would you compare them?
Well, let me first tell you, by the end of August, 64 million Nigerians will be living in hunger. Remember that Nigeria still remains the capital poverty of the world. Looking at the news coming out from the World Bank this morning, stated clearly that 64 million Nigerians at risk of hunger by August, according to the World Bank. About 64 million Nigerians are at risk of falling into food crisis in the coming month, according to the new World Bank report. The bank reported that, on the 9th, the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is currently in Paris, for a summit. He's going to be doing everything possibly best. But one thing we got to remember, the reason why we have food crisis in Nigeria is because of the insecurity that has also affected that as well. So as the World Bank is, giving this alarm, what then needs to be done, to curb these is the question. What are the governors going to be doing? What are the international community going to be doing? Because what we do know is the bank reported that from the 9.7 million in 2019 to 42 million in 2023, the numbers of the individuals has actually doubled. Over the past 4 years, the number of the food insecure across the West Africa has more than quadrupled in the wake up of the multi-overlapping crisis, increasing 32.8 million from the 9.7 million in June 2019. The analysts estimated that 107.5 million people in West Africa are currently at risk of going into hunger. Star Radio UK, I'll come back again to you in the studio.
Well, listeners, Mr. Olayomi Koiki at 10 Downing Street. A quick one. Now, you are standing at Downing Street, wherever you are, people, that is the building, that is where the Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer, that's where they live, that's where their office are, and then a few things there. Now, you have accessibility to them, okay? They might be passing by and you can pose a question. Maybe they wouldn't answer it, but they would have heard what you are saying. If you compare that to what happens in Africa, especially looking at Nigeria, can you go to the presidential villa and have access like that, and then you see some ministers going in and out, and then you'll be able to pose questions or say anything, or you think that the next moment you'll be jackpot or you'll be just thrown into some jeep or something and thrown somewhere that you wouldn't even want to be?
Well, I think looking up to the current speech in Nigeria is currently different from here in UK. But it seems that the new president might open up a little bit more, because remember we told you that since May 29 that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has resumed the office, there seems to be more accessibility. How that accessibility applies to average Nigerians that are into the media. Not everybody is a journalist. Right here we have different individuals. Some are just pictures. Some are here to report. But the question you did ask is whether showing the question and answering back. I mean, we've just seen one of the cabinet officer walking in there. As we know, today is a very busy day. But one thing we've got to remind ourselves is, I've come out from the Nigerian High Commission, walking into here. It is all about the information accessing. And the person that I did met, at the Nigerian High Commission was actually telling me that he needs to go get the money order, for the processing of his Nigerian passport. It's all about the information. Information needs to be delivered in timing, to many Nigerians. And it seems that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the new president, is doing something different from what the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, was not able to do. And do you know what? There's a picture circulating that the former president, Muhammadu Buhari, was captured in London sometime last week, Friday, going to the Baker Street Mosque. Without any, as much as possible, because he's no longer the president, even though there might be detailed security around him. But I'm talking about that, that amount of vehicle that travels with them when they are in the power. I only saw him walking towards Baker Street. We hope we might catch up with him on Friday if he's still in London.
We hope to see what happens there. But listeners, it is Star Radio UK. Now let's go to some of the updates that is happening in Nigeria. And as I did say, this evening, exactly at 18 hours BST, we'll be having Mr. Olayomi Koiki here in the studios, bringing you what exactly Niger voices. Well, we have the time to delve in. You can call in, and he promised that he's going to have maybe a guest on the show as well. Who knows? So just keep your fingers crossed there. All right, now let's come to. Now, MFLA, we thought that maybe, like the courts would say, he is a governor, a former governor of the Bank of Nigeria Central Bank. Now, if he wants surety, he has surety. He's okay. So, but we have the Department of State Services, that is the DSS, and the, OAGF, saying that, you know what, Judge, don't allow him bail, because don't grant him bail. You grant him bail, he's going to just jump bail. So, what are they going to do? Another Nnamdi Kanu case again?
Well, remember that Emefiele, was almost running out of Nigeria in December until Buhari gave him the assurance. And we know that because, Emefiele was going to be heading to what we call a study leave. And the question is, was he doing that for the purpose of running out of Nigeria? Even as at the time that Emefiele was picked up, in Lagos State, the question was whether he was trying to find his route out of Nigeria using the route of the same route that so many people use, especially when you are running away from the government. But according to the Department of State Services, is now saying that the Federal Capital Territory High Court on Tuesday yesterday that the suspended Central Bank of Nigerian Governor Godwin Emefiele will flee the country if granted bail. I don't know whether, that is what the DSS feels, but the former head of the Apex Bank is challenging his detention by the DSS by denying him seeing his family members and lawyers. Now they understand what it looks like for 2 years of incapacity of Nnamdi Kanu by not giving him, what he needs. Emefiele was the central governor from the Southeast. I'm never sure he said anything around Nnamdi Kanu, even though he might not be able to say so because he's employed by the federal government. But now, he's also now saying that the DSS is not allowing access by his own family to visit him.
Well, the DSS, a law to themselves. We'll see what happens. Well, I tell you, when it's happening to someone, you say it's okay. But the moment it happens to you, then you know that, life is happening. So maybe he'll pick a note from there. All right, then, listen to Star Radio UK, Mr. Olayomi Koiki, at 10 Downing Street. Let's move on quickly as we are pressed with time. You see the front part of the Downing Street are the abode of
the motorcade is actually ready to hit the road. As you can see there, the motorcade is preparing, to get the Prime Minister, to the Parliament, and that is exactly, the view in front of you as we speak right now. So as we continue to monitor, the report from here, let's quickly touch on some of the other news as well. Once again, this is still Star Radio UK as we go into some of the other headline. The other headline is still about the new chief of staff. Remember, the new chief of staff, the 100 more military generals might be retired. New service chiefs, 100 military service chiefs may be retired. Emefiele will flee if granted bail, according to the DSS. Also, Asari Dokubo, a warlord, is now also threatening the Igbos. He was able to bring out AK-47, yesterday. And the question is, how did we get to this situation where an average Nigerian have access, to bring weapon out, in a broad daylight? That is a question, as so many Nigerians are concerned that it seems that, Nigeria is still becoming a lawless society. So let's come back again to the front of the screen as we continue, to monitor, the convoy of the Prime Minister. Is a different scenario in Nigeria. We have as many of over 50 to 60 motorcade travel with the president. Also, the former Benue State governor is also being grilled by the EFCC, is the headline. And I'm going to take two more from the headline, and then we're going to go straight into the social media. The Kano State governor reinstate anti-corruption boss and that was sacked by Ganduje. A very sad news as well. Terrorists burned 11 plateau villages to death. With the new chief of staff, the security, we'll be talking about them later on this evening on the Niger Voices. They have a lot of work to do, especially, as terrorism and the crime continue in Nigeria. So let's touch, the last part, and then we go straight to the social media. Once again, it is still the finest African and Caribbean radio station in London. The social media. The social media is where Nigerians have a lot of their discussion. It is the only place that you can literally, vent your anger, whether for or against the government. As we speak right now, one of the comedians known as Akpororo actually was joking, with the current, court case of Peter Obi. He was saying that it seems that Peter Obi will not be getting what he wants, even in 8 years, by the time Bola Tinubu is going to be finishing his tenure. He has actually come out and apologized, when these comedians are doing their skit or they are doing their outing. It seems that sometimes they might overdrive it, but maybe it's part of the freedom of speech. Also, Bola Ahmed Tinubu is trending at about 21,000 this morning. Akim Dosumu, we didn't mention that there is now a new EFCC chairman in town known as Akim Dosumu. Remember that Bawa was removed by the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, last week, but we now have, it seems that might be a wrong news. Information is saying that Akim Dosumu might be a fake news. That is coming back again. But yesterday the news was filtering through, but we've taken that back as well until we get better clarification from the president media team. Most of them have traveled with the president, but Shetima was able to decorate the new Inspector General of Police yesterday, and we'll be monitoring part of what he said yesterday, that his job now is to go after the criminals and make sure that Nigeria is a place that is safe for everyone. In another 2-3 minutes, let's come back again. It seems that Justice Sinama is trending. The Igbo is trending, and I believe it's got to do with what Asari Dokubo actually said. But later on tonight on the Niger Voices, like I said, yes, at about 7 p.m., we'll be having a guest that will be joining us from Nigeria that will be telling us about what they are doing surrounding farming, especially as the Yoruba nation struggle continue, the awareness continue as well. But most importantly, we'll be discussing everything that's got to do with the new service chiefs and how they will manage the current situation in Nigeria. This is Star Radio UK reporting from the number 10 Downing Street. And as you can see there, the two vehicles are ready. To my left-hand side, right, you can get that the other vehicles and the motorcade are ready as well. Let me come back again to you in the studio, Mr. Archie.
Well, listeners, Mr. Olayomi Koiki at 10 Downing Street, bringing you updates from Nigeria. Now, let's quickly touch on one other story, and then we can let you go and get yourself already, have a view of the Prime Minister. Maybe we'll pose a question to him, whether he will hear it or not. But Tinubu versus Atiku, the court, the tribunal, the election tribunal sitting, some people are alluding that Tinubu, Atiku could be favored by the court. I mean, he could win the case. And again, you were saying that after listening to the argument, the tribunal lead Justice Haruna Samani ruled that the court will accommodate PDB's hearing till Thursday. So they're giving him more room to tender their evidence that they have. And also, the Labour Party was trying to get the INEC to produce some evidence, which now they've been made. So INEC is now producing that. Do you think that will change the tide? Do you think it's playing in favor, or it's going in the favor of these individuals or these parties, the PDP and the Labour Party?
Well, the court, the election tribunal continue, and until all evidence are gathered, until everything is put together, definitely we might not be able to know the outcome. But it seems that, remember the last couple of days, there's been, INEC is not having it with the Labour Party and the PDP to release access to some of the documents that will be needed, at the court. So it seems that the court is just trying to balance the situation. But one thing is, what will be the outcome is the question on the lips of so many Nigerians. We already have a president that is currently running the affairs of Nigeria. In the next couple of weeks, maybe we might have a rerun election, or do we say that we're just speculating? Bola Tinubu will end up coming to still be the president. But if the court comes back and say whatever happened on the 25th of February 2023, the election was not right, then what will be the outcome? Then as many Nigerians are still battling it on the social media. But for now, the election tribunal continue, and we'll be giving a more insight of that later on as well, when we are giving the roundup of the news later on in the evening before the end of Niger Voices later on at 1800 hours.
Yes, listeners, we're going to be leaving Mr. Olayomi Koiki soon. But one other story that people are asking of. Now, you see, Emefiele, he's being held by the DSS, and a few of the people who, some have been sacked, Buhari's appointees, let me put it that way. Do you think that there's going to be a trial? Because some people are calling for about 10 ministers of Buhari to be put on trial or to be investigated. Do you think Tinubu will do that?
That is just a dream that is not going to happen. Buhari will never be put on trial. Tinubu will not do that. They're still under the same political party. Yeah. If it was the PDP, we might say yes. But what Bola Tinubu, the president, might do is go after as many of those that work during the tenure of the president for 8 years, especially those that they believe have embezzled, those that have been founded into a kind of corruption. And there are so many of them. But bringing Buhari, even Buhari said, remember we told you last week, that no one should call him to come and testify. If not, they might be finding problems. But like I said, images of Buhari was found in London last week, Friday. Whether he has returned back, whether he's still in the country, time will tell, because we might find out again this Friday whether he will be returning to the same mosque in Baker Street. Okay.
But I'm going to call you Tinubu, maybe you become the president representative here. All right, Mr. Olayomi Koiki, before you go, any other stories or anything on the social media that you want to talk about before we end?
We'll leave everything again till 1800 hours on the Niger Voices. And when we get to the Niger Voices, we'll be discussing all of the new service chief. But for now, I'll leave you back, in the good hands of Archie in the studio.
Okay, Yami, have a lovely day, and we'll catch up later. All right then, it has been Mr. Olayomi Koiki bringing you updates from Nigeria, from 10 Downing Street, where he was this morning, and like we announced this evening exactly at 18 hours BST, that's British Summer Time. It's the same time, 6 p.m. In Nigeria. The Niger Voices, the program, that flagship program, will be taking place, or be all on live here on Starr Radio UK. So make sure that you join in. It gives you ample time. It's 2.5 hours program, and he will just break everything down the way you want, and you have the chance to also add your voice to the discussion. So wherever you are, don't you go away. But now let's enjoy this tune after this short commercial break from Stephen Marley, and it says Babylon System. But let's take this commercial break.
Hi, I'm Ada Williams, and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination, or call 119 for free.
75th celebration.
Okay, Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London, a Wednesday edition of the morning show. But enjoy this music, and then I will be back with you to bring you all the stories making the rounds in other parts of the world. Babylon system. Are we going to see anything different from what is happening across the globe in our part of the world, especially in Africa or in sub-Saharan Africa? Enjoy it. I'll be with you.
We refuse to be what you wanted us to be.
This is Starr Radio UK.
That's the way.
In your car, at work, at home, on your smartphone.
You can't educate for no equal opportunity. Talking about my freedom, talking about my freedom, people freedom and liberty. Yeah, we've been treading on a wine press much too long. Rebel.
In your car, at work, at home, on your smartphone.
This is Starr Radio UK.
Babylon system is the vampire. Yeah. Sucking the children day by day. Yeah. Me said the Babylon system, yes, the vampire, falling empire, sucking the blood of the sufferers. Yeah. Building church and universities. Oh yeah. Deceiving the people continually. Yeah. Me said them graduating thieves and murderers.
Okay, listen to Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London.
Them sucking the blood of the sufferer.
A few seconds to 11:30. And as you know, it is the
Tell the children,
Wednesday edition of the morning show. So in the next 30 minutes, I'll be taking you to
the children,
the Houses of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time. So wherever you are, don't touch the dial. Let's crack on.
children, the truth. Come on, tell the children.
But a quick one, if you have not taken your vaccine, your COVID vaccine, you are in the UK, you've not had your first vaccine, or you had the first one, you've not had your top up,
Tell the children,
you can get it for free.
tell the children the truth.
Just call 119 or
Tell the children the truth.
the various platforms that you can book your appointment on
Children the truth. Call
before the end of June. That is by the 30th. It's up to the 30th of June where that offer is still on. So please make sure you do so that this summer you can enjoy it, because there are lots of events that is going on, and during such events, that is when we find out that the COVID is spreading like bushfire. You don't want to be a culprit, or you want to be found victim. So you know what? The offer is there till the 30th. So we've got about 9 days more for that. So make sure. All right then. So let's take a quick commercial break. We come back and then I'll bring you all the other stories making the rounds in other parts of the world. Stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Ada Williams and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination, or call 119 for free.
You are listening to Starr Radio Morning Show.
Okay, welcome back to the program Starr Radio UK. I am Archie here in the South, the Starr Radio UK main studios, and I'm bringing you all the other stories making the rounds this morning. So now let's crack on. So moving on straight to some African countries as well to bring you all the stories that is making the round there. DRC, France condemns Rwanda's ongoing military support of the M23 rebels, but the Rwandan government have come out to say that, you know what, we have nothing to do with them. So how are they supporting them then? Now on Tuesday, France called for an end to Rwanda's ongoing military support for the M23 rebels in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The story says that France is concerned by reports confirming the continued presence of M23 in territories in the east of the DRC. Rwanda's ongoing military support for this armed group and the presence of Rwandan soldiers on Congolese territory, their support, which we condemn, must cease, according to a statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Mainly Tutsi rebellion, the M23, accused by the UN of numerous crimes in the east of DRC, took up arms again at the end of 2021 after 10 years of dormancy and has seized vast swaths of territory in the Congolese province of North Kivu, bordering Rwanda and Uganda. The commitment made by the various regional players must now be put into practice in order to speed up the withdrawal of the M23 from the occupied territories, to confine this group and to encourage all armed groups to commit to the national demobilization and disarmament process continued. The Why does say, which raises the possibility of sanctions against those who obstruct peace. So are they going to place the sanction on Rwanda? Well, we'll see what happens from there. This all coming away from Starr Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Let's move on. Let's move on to some other stories making the rounds there. Well, the Sudanese war has the civil war that's going on is still going on there. But the UN High Commission now for Refugees was in Nairobi, Kenya on World Refugee Day, and during a press conference yesterday, Filippo Grandi deplored the consequences of the conflict in Sudan, which has forced 500,000 refugees to flee Sudan. Another 2 million are internally displaced. It is a worrying situation because we haven't seen much progress so far, if any, in the negotiations between the two generals who are fighting in the country, he later said during an interview. We are unfortunately gradually witnessing the destruction of this country. Now, Grandi was speaking a day after donors at a UN conference pledged close to $1.5 billion to tackle the humanitarian crisis in Sudan and help its neighbors host those fleeing the fighting, including Chad, South Sudan, and Egypt. The figure was, however, less than half of what humanitarians have said it required this year, and Grandi appealed to the international community to dig deeper, saying donations were a fraction of defense spending by rich nations. Well, interesting. Well, they will tell you with what is happening in Ukraine, everybody want to beef up their security, right? Okay. Now, moving on straight on to some other stories making the rounds on the African continent as well. Sierra Leone president has called for peaceful vote ahead of the Saturday's polls. Now, Sierra Leone's president, who is running for re-election, held his final rally in the capital of Freetown, Lumley Beach, Tuesday on June 20. Now, Julius Maada Bio held his final rally in the capital before the polls opened on Saturday, June 24. Now, voters will also elect MPs and local councils. Julius Maada Bio is one of the 13 candidates vying for the top office. The Sierra Leone People's Party nominee called for a peaceful election at the end of a tense campaign. Now, I want to appeal to everybody. We want peaceful elections, no violence. You have your card. On that day, go and vote, he told his supporters from a stage on Freetown's Lumley Beach. Now, traditional parade-like political street rallies have been banned, and this year to avoid potential violence. Masoud Jibril Zise, a former electoral commissioner, expressed concern that there wasn't process of healing after deadly riots in August last year. Everybody knows that elections are a period where they just need something to spark off, and then there will be chaos everywhere. The two main parties waited until just a month before elections to release their manifestos. But we'll be seeing what is going to happen there. It's all coming your way from Starr Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Okay, we take a break. and then we come back and we'll be taking you to other parts of the world for you to know what is happening there. Stay tuned and don't touch the dial. Star Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London.
Hi, I'm Ada Williams and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination, or call 119 for free.
Hi guys, this is your friend Uruj from SendWave. SendWave is a money transfer app that is used by people all over the world to send money to their loved ones in Africa. With SendWave, you can send money to Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And the best part is, SendWave is absolutely commission free. Our exchange rates are excellent. You can see for yourself by checking them out on our website. So how do you use SendWave? SendWave is an app that you can download onto your phone from the App Store or Google Play Store. The app is free to download. After downloading it, just open the app and enter your name, email, and phone number. That's it. You're good to go. Make sure you use the promo code SR. S for Star, R for Radio. This promo code will give you £5 free credit to send to Africa on your first transaction. Your money will be delivered to your recipient within seconds. Feel free to call me on 0749 7377 647 at any time. I'll be happy to tell you all about SendWave and help you in any way I can. Remember to use the promo code SR for £5 free credit. Medasse.
Hi everyone, it's your girl BB Clement, the author of How to Go From Employee to Entrepreneur and the host of your weekly business show, BB Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Star Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Are you looking for the fastest, reliable, and trustworthy door-to-door shipment company? Well, look no further. When was the last time your family received a shipment back in Ghana on time and in time? You are not sure? Well, Lamb Shippers, we pride ourselves with being the fastest, reliable, and trustworthy shippers you can use. You are assured of a prompt pickup anywhere in the UK by our personnel. They also make sure your items are well packaged to get to its destination in time. When it comes to door-to-door shipment, look no further. Well, Lamb Shippers, contact us on 07939009321 or 07498911820. Or you can visit our website www.welllamp.co.uk. You can also drop us a mail, info@welllamp@gmail.com. Well Lamp Shippers, fast, reliable, and trustworthy.
Hi, I'm Ada Williams and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination, or call 119 for free.
Okay, welcome back to the program Star Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London, bringing the time now to 20 minutes to the top of the hour. So in the next 20 minutes, I will be taking you to the Houses of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time. So you have to just keep your dial so logged on Star Radio UK when we take you there. All right then. So now let's move on swiftly to the other stories making the rounds in other parts of the world. Now, quickly, one story from Ghana, and then we come to other parts of the world. Now, Akufo-Addo needs to revisit how rating agencies work, Professor Lord Mensah is saying. Now, Associate Professor at the Department of Finance of the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah has admonished President Akufo-Addo to seek clarity on how ratings by credit rating agencies are carried out. Now, this comes on the back of concerns raised by President Akufo-Addo, who alleges international rating agencies recklessly downgraded Ghana, completely shutting the country from the international capital market and inadvertently worsening the economy. Now, Professor Lord Mensah insists the rating agencies only reflect the economic realities of a country. Now, if you're listening to me and you're here from Ghana, or you are there listening to us, I mean, you know lots of things that is going there. Do you think that the ratings or what this agency said about Ghana was right or wrong? You know, I've been talking about the wanton dissipation of funds or state funds. But well, the president thinks otherwise, that they were just doing that, they were just doing it carelessly or recklessly, and that is causing Ghana to be in this particular situation. Now, it goes on further to say we may have to appreciate how the ratings are done across all the major rating agencies, and clearly nothing has changed about these rating agencies, he argued. The associate professor further went on to explain how the ratings are done. The ratings are not intentions, they are models that require inputs, and whatever comes out of it is what is used to grade you. So if you look at the various models that they use, various countries have what we call relative ratios. So if it is Ghana, they are looking at your debt to GDP, and if it's the US or European country, it is their debt to GDP. Country specific challenges are also catered for in the model. So the model itself knows that you are an African country, and therefore it is your budget deficit. If it relays it to your GDP, so the model is so flexible that it accepts country specification situation, he explained. But it's all coming away from Starr Radio UK. Interesting. I remember back in the day when Akufo-Addo was a candidate to Akufo-Addo opposition flag bearer of the MPP, and when the various agencies rated Ghana down, I mean B and all that stuff that was going on, I think that he was of the view that yes, the government is the president, that Mahama and his team were not running the country the way they were supposed to, and that is why Ghana found themselves in that particular situation. But however, when the shoe was on the other foot, they think that, well, that is not fair at all. But what do you think? Well, we don't have enough time for you to be looking at everything and then discussing everything. But I promise you one thing for sure, that tomorrow we'll have enough time to go through it. Now, moving on to other parts of the world as well, the Biden has called President Xi a dictator a day after Beijing talks. So I said, this old man, he needs to go on pension, right? Okay. Now, U.S. President Joe Biden has called Chinese President Xi Jinping a dictator at a fundraising event in California. His remarks came a day after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken met Mr. Xi for talks in Beijing, which were aimed at ease tensions between the two superpowers. Mr. Biden also said Mr. Xi was embarrassed after an alleged Chinese spy balloon was shot down by the U.S. Now, China said it firmly opposes Mr. Biden's comments. The reason why Xi Jinping got very upset in terms of when I shot that balloon down with two boxcars full of spy equipment in it was he didn't know it was there, Mr. Biden said at the event on Tuesday. Now, that's a great embarrassment for dictators when they didn't know what happened, he added. The balloon, which China says was monitoring weather, drifted across the continental U.S. before being destroyed by the American military aircraft in February. Washington later said it was part of a sprawling Chinese intelligence collection program. Mr. Blinken, who was meant to visit Beijing at the time, postponed the trip in the wake of the incident. But now that he's gone there to iron out the differences or make peace, Now the president puts his foot in it once again. But what do you think about all that? So coming away from Star Radio UK, a quarter to 12 the time. Star Radio UK, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Now Zelensky has admitted that progress is being made slowly. Now President Volodymyr Zelensky has acknowledged battlefield progress has been slower than desired weeks into Ukraine's military offensive to recapture areas occupied by Russia. Now some people believe this is a Hollywood movie and expect results now. It is not, he said. Now what's at stake is people's lives. Ukraine says its counteroffensive was has reclaimed 8 villages so far in the southern region of Zaporizhia and Donetsk at the east. Now Mr. Zelensky said the military push was not going easily because 200,000 square kilometers, that is 77,220 square miles of Ukrainian territory, has been mined by Russian forces. Whatever some might want, including attempts to pressure us, with all due respect, we will advance on the battlefield the way we deem best, Mrs. Zelensky said there. So how do you see the whole Zelensky Ukrainian comeback going? What is your take on that? Star Radio UK. Well, the missing Titanic sub must set have arrived at the Bangin as Bangin have been heard there. Now the US Coast Guard has confirmed that the Canadian aircraft detected underwater noises in a search area for the missing Titanic sub. Now US media citing internal US government memos described them as banging sounds. Now contact with the miniature sub, which has 5 people on board, was lost on Sunday as it made 3,800 descent to the Titanic wreck. The sub air supply is expected to run out on Thursday at around 11 hours BST. So about this time it would have run out. The sub's air supply, on board is British Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood and his son Suleiman, along with British explorer Hamish Harding. Now, Paul Henry Nagiolet, a former French Navy diver, is also on the vessel. And as it is Stockton Rush, chief executive of Ocean Gate, the firm behind the dive. So, what is going to happen? We are praying and keeping fingers and everything crossed that the banging that has been found, they will now they will now find this ocean, the Titan. And I bet you that it will take ages before anybody, thinks of embarking on such a trip to go and see the Titanic, which is lying at on the seabed. Well, 3,800 miles. 3,800 what? Is it meters or miles? Oh my God. Okay, 3,800 meters in the bottom of the sea. All right then. Now let's move on. Let's move on to some other stories making the rounds here in the UK. A couple of them, and then we can bring the first part of the program to a close. Now, interest rates expected after inflation shock. Now, everybody was thinking that, you know what, come today, yes, Wednesday, when the ONS comes out with the inflation rate, they'll be telling us that it's dropped. However, inflation, which measures the prices rise, was at 8.7 in the year to May. The rate it was in April. So April it was 8.7 and it still remained there. Now prices of flights and second-hand cars rising led to the unexpected figures, but the cost of food and energy is already hitting households' budget hard. Interest rates are widely expected to rise by 0.25% to 4.75 on Thursday, but some suggest they could now rise to 5%. So instead of doing 0.25, it could be 0.5%. The bank is taking its tax with keeping the inflation at 2%, but the current inflation rate is 4 times higher than this. Well, it's all coming your way from Star Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. A couple of other stories and then we'll move on. Now, hundreds of long-term sick and mentally ill people from the Windrush generation were sent back to the Caribbean in what has been described as a historic injustice. Now, formally classified documents reveals at least 411 people were sent back between 1950s and the early 1970s under a scheme that was meant to be voluntarily. Now, families say they were ripped apart and some were never reunited. The UK government said it was committed to tackling the injustice of the era. A spokesman said, "We recognize the campaigning of families seeking to address the historic injustice faced by their loved ones and remain absolutely committed to righting the wrongs faced by those in the Windrush generation." The revelation, which echoes the Windrush scandal in which hundreds of Commonwealth citizens, many from the Caribbean, were wrongly deported, have sparked calls for a public inquiry into the repatriation policy. Now, those sent back were among thousands who moved from British colonies to the UK in the decades after the World War II. They were known as the Windrush generation, named after one of the first ships to arrive in the UK, the HMT Empire Windrush. This year will mark the 75th anniversary of the first arrivals. It's all coming your way from Starr Radio UK. It is your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London. Wow, about 10,000 people have gathered to welcome the summer solstice at Stonehenge. Now, Jews and pagans join a colorful mix of visitors to mark the longest day of the year at the ancient site near Salisbury, Wiltshire. On the solstice, the sun rises behind the entrance to the stone circle, and rays of light are channeled into the center of the monument. Now, many people travel from around the world to celebrate at the stones. Stonehenge, distinctive formation, aligns to both the midsummer sunrise and the midwinter sunset as well. Well, Janet Burns and Gay Richardson from County Durham joined the celebrations in Salisbury as well. So, a celebration has taken place, and we hope to see what fortunes that bring. But I hope that the operators or the controllers of Stonehenge will make huge sums of money this time round. But this is where I have to let me see, because that seemed to be the final story. Okay, yeah, I remember back in the day I traveled during the same time and to well, somewhere there, Somerset. And on our way, we had to go through that side. And I remember the Glastonbury Festival gates have been opened to allow thousands of patiently waiting campers to descend upon the grounds in its 51st year. Co-organizer Emily Avers greeted the first group of festival goers to reach the site in Pilton, Somerset. The music bill across the long weekend includes Sir Elton John, Lana Del Rey, Lewis Capaldi, and Lil Nas X. Miss Evie said she aimed for gender balance but had a female headline act pulled out. Well, listeners, this is where I have to bring the first part of the program to a close, so that we'll prepare the ground to take you to the House of Parliament for the Prime Minister's question time. And I want to say thank you very much to each and every one of you who have tuned in this morning to listen to us as well. But remember, as we did announce this morning, Niger Voices will be coming your way exactly at 18 hours BST. And there seems to be some connectivity issue going on here, and we'll see to address that as well. But wherever you are, stay tuned and don't you go away. Starr, your favorite African and Caribbean radio station in London.
Hi, I'm Ada Williams and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination, or call 119 for free.
Hi guys, this is your friend Uruj from SendWave. SendWave is a money transfer app that is used by people all over the world to send money to their loved ones in Africa. With SendWave, you can send money to Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. And the best part is, SendWave is absolutely commission-free. Our exchange rates are excellent. You can see for yourself by checking them out on our website. So how do you use SendWave? SendWave is an app that you can download onto your phone from the App Store or Google Play Store. The app is free to download. After downloading it, just open the app and enter your name, email, and phone number. That's it. You're good to go. Make sure you use the promo code SR. S for Star, R for Radio. This promo code will give you £5 free credit to send to Africa on your first transaction. Your money will be delivered to your recipient within seconds. Feel free to call me on 0749 7377 647 at any time. I'll be happy to tell you all about SendWave and help you in any way I can. Remember to use the promo code SR for £5 free credit. Medasse.
Hi everyone, it's your girl BB Clement, the author of How to Go from Employee to Entrepreneur, and the host of your weekly business show, BB Means Business, the show where we discuss everything you ever wanted to know about business, but you were afraid to ask. How do I start my business? How do I raise the finance? How do I grow my business? Where am I going to find my customers? Join me every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. on Starr Radio UK to get all the information and tips that you need to become a successful entrepreneur and become financially free. Remember, don't let life dictate to you. Rather, put your signature on life.
Are you looking for the fastest, reliable, and trustworthy door-to-door shipment company? Well, look no further. When was the last time your family received a shipment back in Ghana on time and in time? You are not sure? Well, Lamb Shippers, we pride ourselves with being the fastest, reliable, and trustworthy shippers you can use. You are assured of a prompt pickup anywhere in the UK by our personnel. They also make sure your items are well packaged to get to its destination in time. When it comes to door-to-door shipment, look no further. Well, Lamb Shippers, contact us on 07939009321 or 07498911820. Or you can visit our website www.welllamp.co.uk. You can also drop us a mail, info@welllamp@gmail.com. Well Lamp Shippers, fast, reliable, and trustworthy.
Hi, I'm Ada Williams and I'm an NHS pharmacist. Don't get caught out by COVID this summer. If you have only had one COVID-19 vaccination or haven't had one at all, you can still get your free vaccine until the 30th of June. Book your vaccine through the NHS app, online at nhs.uk/COVID vaccination or call 119 for free.
Market as of right, having privileged access to the EU market, being under UK services regulation and having access to the free trade agreements to which we're acceding. In addition, I've led trade missions with Invest&I to Canada and South Korea to promote brilliant Northern Ireland businesses overseas, and will take further similar steps.
Salute. What would be the benefit to businesses in Northern Ireland in working with the Export Academy?
Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful to him for highlighting the Export Academy brought forward by the Department for Business and Trade, and to illustrate their success, I'd point to Loudon Guitars, who take their products from County Down, their factory in County Down, to customers in Australia. I would encourage businesses across Northern Ireland and indeed across the UK to use the Export Academy as he implicitly suggests.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. How will the new New Deal for Northern Ireland funding help boost economic growth and increase Northern Ireland's competitiveness overseas?
Mr. Speaker, £400 million of New Deal for Northern Ireland funding will underscore the UK's commitment to supporting and protecting the interests of people and businesses in Northern Ireland. New Deal funding has been invested in projects such as a £15 million project for Skill Up to improve skills, £11 million for a cyber AI hub at Queen's University Belfast, and a number of other projects, including £8 million for Invest NI to help promote trade. Mr. Speaker, it's a commitment of which we're very proud, and I could speak at even greater length.
Ian Paisley. Mr. Speaker, what is the Northern Ireland office doing, and what is the Minister doing to promote Northern Ireland businesses at COP28? This will be a significant opportunity for Northern Ireland businesses to be marketed on the world stage, especially hydrogen technology, which we have a hub there.
Mr. Speaker, I know that the Honourable Gentleman has a personal interest in this subject. I'd be very happy to meet with him to discuss how we can do more. I know that there are some excellent businesses in Northern Ireland, like Catagen, with an incredible technology for converting wind power and water into hydrocarbon fuels, and they're extraordinary businesses which should have the opportunity to participate. I'd be glad to meet with him to discuss what more can be done.
That completes Northern Ireland questions. We now come to questions to the Prime Minister, Patricia Gibson.
Number one, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, this morning I opened the Ukraine Recovery Conference alongside President Zelensky. The aim of the conference is to secure a resilient economic future for Ukraine. And as we mark the 75th anniversary of the arrival of the Empire Windrush tomorrow, I'm sure the whole House will celebrate the contribution of the Windrush generation who have done so much to build the Britain that we cherish today. And Mr. Speaker, this Armed Forces Week, we thank them for all they do to keep our country safe. This morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Patricia Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As inflation continues to outstrip pay awards, and tomorrow we expect to see the 13th consecutive rise in interest rates, will the Prime Minister tell the House by how much living standards have fallen during his 8 months in office?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've always been very clear. Inflation is putting pressure on family budgets, and that's why the UK government has taken decisive action to support families through this difficult time, including households in Scotland who are receiving considerable support, not just with their energy bills, but also the most vulnerable as well.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we have got a proud record of supporting the nuclear industry, which is an essential part of achieving secure, low-carbon energy. I'm delighted that my right honourable friend, the Prime Minister, has given us backing to the next generation of nuclear reactors, including SMR and larger projects, and ask that he now commits to seeing the fuel for these projects manufactured in the UK. This will secure long-term high-skilled employment at key sites in the North West, like Springfields in my constituency, and a supply chain across the UK.
Well, Mr. Speaker, we are preserving and strengthening the UK's nuclear fuel production capacity through our £75 million nuclear fuel fund. I know that Springfield Fuels in my honourable friend's constituency has benefited from £30 million of funding, and he's right to say that our domestic nuclear fuel sector has a critical role to play in supporting the UK's energy security and independence, and I know that he will continue to be a champion for the industry in this House.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in his comments about the Windrush generation who've contributed so much to our country and to the armed forces in this week and all weeks. And Glenda Jackson's passing leaves a space in our cultural and political life that can never be filled. She played many roles with great distinction, passion and commitment. Academy Award-winning actor, campaigning Labour MP and an effective government minister. We will never see talent like hers again. Mr. Speaker, one of the Prime Minister's own MPs says Britain is facing a mortgage catastrophe. Does he agree with her?
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I start by joining the honourable gentleman in his tribute to Glenda Jackson? And Mr. Speaker, it's also right that we do support those with the mortgages, and this is why the absolute right economic priority is to halve inflation. Because inflation is what is driving interest rates up, inflation is what erodes people's savings and pushes up prices and ultimately makes them poorer. Now, this is why, a long time before I had this job, I highlighted highlighted the importance of tackling inflation. It's why that I said it is never easy to root out inflation, but we will take the difficult and responsible decisions to do so. It's an approach that the IMF has strongly endorsed in their words, and describing our actions as decisive and responsible.
Mr. Speaker, I realise the Prime Minister spent all week saying he doesn't want to influence anyone or anything. He's certainly keeping to that with his answer. He knows very well the cause of the mortgage catastrophe. 13 years of economic failure and a Tory kamikaze budget which crashed the economy and put mortgages through the roof. So will the Prime Minister tell us how much the Tory mortgage penalty is going to cost the average homeowner?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as ever, the honourable gentleman isn't aware of the global macroeconomic situation. But let me do, but substantively, let me tell him and the House what we are doing to support those with mortgages. We have deliberately and proactively increased the generosity of our support for the mortgage interest scheme. We've also established a new FCA communal duty which will protect people with mortgages, for example, moving them onto interest-only mortgages or lengthening mortgage terms. And we have spent tens of billions of pounds supporting people with a cost of living, particularly the most vulnerable. But that is the difference between us, Mr. Speaker. While he is always focused on the politics, we are actually just getting on and doing the job.
Well, let's test that, because the question he refuses to answer, he actually knows the answer to this question, is £2,900 extra. That's the cost to the average family of the Tory mortgage penalty. Now, he was warned by experts about this as long ago as autumn last year, but he either didn't get it, didn't believe it, or didn't care, because he certainly didn't do anything. And when I raised this a couple of months ago, he had the gall to stand at that dispatch box and say he was delivering for homeowners. How is an extra £2,900 a year on repayment delivering for homeowners?
Well, so, Mr. Speaker, now let's just look at the facts. Let's look at the facts, because he talks about interest rates. Perhaps the honourable gentleman could explain why interest rates are at similar levels in the United States, in Canada, in Australia and New Zealand. Why they're at the highest level in Europe that they've been for 2 decades, Mr. Speaker. That's why it's important that we have a plan to reduce inflation. But in contrast, what do we hear from the honourable gentleman? He wants to borrow an extra £28 billion a year. That would make the situation worse. He wants to ban new supplies of energy from the North Sea. That would make the situation worse. And he wants to give in to unions' unaffordable pay demands. That would make the situation worse. Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have many policies, but the few that he does have all have the same thing in common. They're dangerous, inflationary, and working people would pay the price.
Seriously? Sorry? I don't think we need any more, do we? No. Keir Starmer.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the Prime Minister has a keen interest in the mortgage market in California, but I'm talking about mortgage holders here. And whilst his government is consumed in law-breaking chaos and division, working people are paying the price. This morning, I spoke to James in Selby. He's a police officer, working hard to keep people safe every day. The Tory mortgage penalty is going to cost him and his family £400 more each and every month. That's nearly £5,000. He told me this morning, they may not want to hear this, he told me this morning that they've decided to sell their house, to downsize, and he's just told his children they're going to have to start sharing bedrooms. Why should James and his family pay the cost of the Prime Minister's failure?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I hope when the honourable gentleman was talking to James, he explained that his economic policies would make James's situation worse, Mr. Speaker. And it's not just me saying that, Mr. Speaker. The Independent Institute of Fiscal Studies says his policy of never-ending debt and borrowing would damage James because it would increase inflation and drive up interest rates, leaving James and everybody else in this country poorer, Mr. Speaker. The IMF has said that our plan prioritises not what is politically easy, but what is right for the British people. That is what responsible economic leadership looks like, Mr. Speaker.
James and his family will have been listening to that Prime Minister. And their plight should keep them awake at night, because over the next few years, 7.5 million people are going to be in the same boat, all paying the Tory mortgage penalty, month after month after month. The situation is so dire that repossessions are already up 50%, a total betrayal of the idea that if you work hard, you'll get on. So what's the Prime Minister going to do to make sure more families don't lose their homes?
Mr. Speaker, I know he's reading from his prepared script, but he failed to actually listen to the answer that I gave. I did actually spell out in detail what we are doing, Mr. Speaker. We've increased the generosity of support for mortgage interest scheme. We did that proactively in advance. We've also established a new FCA consumer duty that will protect borrowers, for example, by allowing them to extend their mortgage terms or switch to interest-only mortgages. And we have spent tens of billions of pounds supporting households with living costs. Those are the practical steps that we are taking to help James and other families who are facing these situations. But what I would say, because he mentioned mortgage arrears and repossessions, I am pleased to say, Mr. Speaker, they are actually running at a level today that is below when we entered the pandemic, Mr. Speaker, because of the actions that we're taking. But more importantly than that, perhaps, Mr. Speaker, is that they are also running 3 times lower than the level we inherited from the last Labour government.
Mr. Speaker, I'm sure from the vantage point of his helicopter, everything might look fine. But that's not the lived experience of those on the ground. After 13 years of economic failure across the country, people are paying the price of uncosted, reckless, damaging decisions by the Tory party. And even now, as mortgages go through the roof, the Prime Minister is planning to wave through honours and peerages for those who cause misery for millions. What does it say about this government that while working people are worrying about mortgage hike, paying the bills, even repossessions, the Tory party is rewarding those guilty of economic vandalism?
Mr. Speaker, no amount of personal attacks and petty point scoring can disguise the fact that the honourable gentleman does not have a plan for this country, Mr. Speaker. He comes here every week to make the same petty points. We are getting on and delivering for this country. Yes, Mr. Speaker, inflation is a challenge. That's why we are on track to keep reducing it. We are reducing waiting lists. We are stopping the boats, all while he is focused on the past, focused on the politics. It's all talk, whereas from this government and from this Prime Minister, we deliver for the country.
Philip, I know you're popular. Come on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My constituents continue to be concerned about energy prices and energy security. Will the Prime Minister assure me that he will not cave in to the extremist bullies from Just Stop Oil and their patsies on the Labour leadership as well? And instead commit to developing new oil and gas production in the United Kingdom, which will be good for jobs, good for the economy, and make us less dependent on foreign countries for our energy supply.
Well, as ever, my honourable friend makes an excellent point. Putin's weaponisation of energy has amplified the need for greater energy security, and that's why we deliberately have launched new licensing rounds for the North Sea. Official forecasts suggest that a block on North Sea oil and gas investment would mean that the UK's dependence on imports would rise substantially. Mr. Speaker, the Labour Party's decision is one that puts ideology ahead of jobs, investment and Britain's energy security.
SNP leader Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, in February the Prime Minister told this here House that borrowing costs are back to where they should be. In March he boasted we are on track to halve inflation by the end of the year. And in May he then said economic optimism is increasing. Well, given the dire economic reality of today, is it not now clear that he's taken his honesty lessons from Boris Johnson?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman also failed to mention that not just the Bank of England, not just the OBR, not just the OECD, but also the IMF, all of them have upgraded their growth outlook for the United Kingdom economy this year. Whilst he and others were predicting that this country would enter a recession, the actions of this government have meant that we have so far averted that, and we continue to be on track to keep reducing inflation because that is the right economic priority.
Can I just say, I want people to be a little bit more cautious on what they say. This is the present serving Prime Minister. The danger will, it could be misled in the way that it was put. Stephen Flynn.
Mr. Speaker, listening to the Prime Minister's answer, I don't think he quite grasps the reality of the economic situation facing households across these isles. How could he? But it doesn't need to be like this. It didn't need to be like this. Because mortgage deals in Ireland, they're not sitting in excess of 6%, they're around about 4.5%. Inflation in the euro area, that's not sitting at 8.7%, it's sitting at closer to 6%. Britain is broke. Now, 7 years after their EU referendum, will he finally admit that it was Brexit that broke it?
Well, Mr. Speaker, again, I don't think the honourable gentleman was paying attention earlier. Interest rates in this country are at similar levels to they are in America, in Canada, in Australia and in New Zealand, Mr. Speaker. The rise in inflation and interest rates is a global phenomenon, but that's why early I set out that it was the right economic priority to have to bring inflation down. That's what this government would do, but that requires, Mr. Speaker, that requires difficult and responsible decisions. That's what leadership looks like. I don't think the SNP will ever do the same thing.
Virginia Crosby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wilver, in my constituency of Anismore, is recognised as the best site for small modular reactors and large-scale new nuclear in the UK. Given the UK government's commitment to nuclear and Wilver, when can my Anismore constituents expect to hear the result of Great British Nuclear's small modular reactor competition? Diolch yn fawr.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there'll be no greater champion for this technology and her community than my honourable friend. My understanding is that the first stage of market engagement is already underway. The expectation is that the down selection process will be launched this summer with an ambition to assess and decide on the leading technologies this autumn. The competition will be open, judicious, fair and robust, and I express all my confidence that we will select the best technology for the United Kingdom.
Anxious welcoming it. Right, Stephen Furry.
Thank you very much. 4 months after the very welcome Windsor Framework, there is still no restored Northern Ireland Executive or Assembly, and we are facing an unprecedented budget crisis. This situation is untenable. It's getting worse every day, and the government approach seems to be to wait to see if something happens rather than leading from the front. So can the Prime Minister confirm that he's willing to work with the Northern Ireland parties on a financial package for a restored executive, and also will he work more closely with the Irish government to try to drive a process, including putting reform with institutions on the agenda, so that those who want to govern Northern Ireland can do so?
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the honourable gentleman for his engagement with me and the government during this process. I share his frustration, and our focus remains on delivering for the people of Northern Ireland, who expect and deserve their locally elected decision makers to address the issues that matter to them most. I thank him for his kind words about the Windsor Framework and how it allows us to move forward, and for many years we have recognised the challenges particularly facing Northern Ireland, and that's why we've provided over £7 billion of funding on top of the Barnett Block grant since 2014. I can assure him that my right honourable friend, the Northern Ireland Secretary, remains in close contact with all the parties in Northern Ireland to clarify what more is needed so that we can restore the conditions for executive formation.
Dr. Liam Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since 2016, cumulative growth in Italy has been 4%, in Germany has been 5.5%, in the UK has been 6.8%. In May last year, British exports to the European Union were not just the highest since Brexit, but since records began. The UK had the highest growth of any G7 country in both 2021 and 2022. The Eurozone is currently in recession. We are not. Is it not time we had more good news topping Britain up?
my right honourable friend is quite right to highlight the improvement in our economic outlook, and he's right to highlight the good positive news showing the strength in the underlying economy. And I know that he joins with me in saying that our economic priority right now must be to continue to bear down on inflation. But while we do that, we are putting the conditions in place to grow this economy. And as he said, unlike the party opposite, we won't talk Britain down, we will grow the country's jobs.
Thank you much, Mr. Speaker. Last night was another fantastic night at Hampden, a real tonic during tough times for Tartan Army and Scotland more widely. However, whilst English and Welsh fans could watch their national teams for free on Channel 4 and S4C, only a small fraction of Scots could watch the match, with many unable to afford the subscription to Viaplay, particularly during this cost of living crisis. So, does he agree with me that this is inherently unfair? And will he ask the DCMS Secretary to meet with me to discuss how we fix this situation?
Well, can I join with my honourable friend in his comments about the match and let him know that I know the Culture Secretary is engaging with him and others on this particular topic, and I'll make sure that she gets back to him.
Anne-Marie Morris.
Speaker, in December last year, Link conducted some research on cash acceptance. Their research found that nearly half, 45% of people, have been somewhere where cash has not been accepted or has been discouraged, and 49% said being unable or being discouraged to pay in cash was inconvenient. Will the Prime Minister look again at the Financial Services and Markets Bill when it comes back from the other place and ensure that any entity providing a public service directly to the public and involving payments or a charge must accept cash?
Mr. Speaker, we know that cash continues to be used by millions of people, particularly those in vulnerable groups, and that's why the Financial Service and Markets Bill will, for the first ever time, protect people's access to cash in UK law. The bill also supports businesses to continue to accept cash by ensuring reasonable access to deposit facilities, but as technology and consumer behaviour changes, it is right that organisations themselves should be able to choose the forms of payment that they will accept.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Prime Minister believe that the reward for being a lawbreaker should be to be made a lawmaker?
Mr. Speaker, there is, as we discussed last week, a well-established process of vetting for all peerages, and I, in keeping with the convention followed by Prime Ministers of both parties, have followed the same process.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Wiltshire leads the world in agri-tech, the farming increases in productivity that are going to feed the world's growing population without wrecking the environment. I welcome what the government has done in this space, particularly in gene editing, only possible because of Brexit, of course. Will my right honourable friend acknowledge the work of Wiltshire farmers and tech entrepreneurs, particularly James Dyson, but there are many more? Does he agree with me this is one of the key opportunities for our country to become a high-wage, high-skill, high-tech economy?
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to agri-tech, we are among the best in the world, with fantastic research bodies, businesses and pioneering farmers and growers, and I join my honourable friend in paying tribute to all of them. They're getting our support with £270 million farming innovation programme, and as he rightly mentioned, we are seizing the opportunities from our exit from the EU, including through our plans to more quickly develop gene-edited crops that are resistant to drought and flooding, that will drive up growth, productivity and create jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So just to recap, during this Parliament we've had one Tory Prime Minister who turned out to be a proven liar, a second Tory Prime Minister who was outlasted by a lettuce. After this week's pathetic no-show by the Prime Minister, what one word would he use to describe himself? Might it be weak?
Mr. Speaker, what's weak is the party opposite being unable to stand up, to stand up to the people who fund them and stand behind hard-working families in this country.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the steps the Prime Minister is taking to stop illegal, dangerous and unnecessary small boat crossings, which are overwhelming our asylum system, but I have to raise significant concerns about a recent decision to stand up a third hotel in Burton, as well as increase capacity at another hotel by 64%. This is going to have a serious knock-on effect for our response to homelessness and rough sleeping, as well as causing challenges for wider public services in East Staffordshire. What further support can the Prime Minister provide local authorities in East Staffordshire to deal with these urgent concerns?
Well, Mr. Speaker, this is why we need to stop the boat so that we can relieve the unsustainable pressure on our asylum system and accommodation services, which is costing British taxpayers over £3 billion a year. Our new bill will ensure that anyone arriving illegally will be detained and swiftly removed, but in the meantime we will take action to address the unacceptable costs of housing migrants in hotels. We recognise the pressure this places on local areas. That's why central government is providing further dispersal financial support, but I will ensure that my honourable friend gets a meeting with the Immigration Minister to discuss her specific local concerns further.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Imperial NHS Trust described the government's recent decision to delay the rebuilding of Charing Cross, Hammersmith and St Mary's hospitals as hugely damaging for the health and healthcare of hundreds of thousands of people. Will the Prime Minister keep the promise made to me by his predecessor 1 year ago from that dispatch box and guarantee completion of new hospitals on these sites by 2030?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the government remains committed to 2 new hospital schemes for Imperial College Healthcare Trust at Hammersmith Hospital and Charing Cross Hospital, and for St Mary's Hospital as part of the new hospital programme. We've expanded the programme, as the Honourable Gentleman knows, to include buildings with RAC, and we need to address those as a priority for the safety of staff and patients. However, we still expect the majority of schemes in Cohort 4 to be in construction before 2030, and I know that the Department will continue to keep him updated on progress.
David Davis. Mr. Speaker, the United Kingdom sanctioned Iran for promoting terrorism, for destabilising the Middle East, for supplying weapons to our enemies, and of course the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Within the past few weeks, the journalist David Rose has reported in the Jewish Chronicle that British universities have been undertaking research in collaboration with Iranian researchers and universities into areas of potential military applications, including drone technology, fighter jets, battlefield armour, and laser communication. Will the Prime Minister initiate an investigation into this and take action to stop the failure of our sanctions regime before it does any more harm to the national interest of the United Kingdom and our allies?
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable friend for raising this important topic. We take all allegations of breaches of export control seriously, and my understanding is that officials in the Department for Business and Trade are currently now investigating the allegations made in the recent press articles cited. We will not accept collaborations which compromise our national security, and that's why we've made our systems more robust, including expanding the scope of the Academic Technology Approval Scheme to protect UK research from ever-changing global threats. But my right honourable friend is absolutely right to highlight this, and he has my assurance we will keep on it.
Steve McCabe.
Could any of the material the Prime Minister's government is trying to avoid giving to the COVID inquiry cover his tenure as Chancellor and his eat out to help out policy?
Mr. Speaker, as I've said before, I think it is right that we learn the lessons from COVID, and that's why, so that we can be better prepared for the future, and that's why the government has cooperated in a spirit of transparency and candour with the inquiry, handing over more than 55,000 documents so far, Mr. Speaker. There is a very specific point of disagreement. As the honourable gentleman well knows, it is the subject now of legal proceedings, so I'm not able to comment further.
Rex Smith.
Mr. Speaker, despite being world leaders in motorsport, the UK has not hosted a round of the World Rally Championship since 2019. We now have an opportunity to host a round in Northern Ireland next year to bring in excess of £100 million to the economy. But to make that happen, the promoters need government underwriting of approximately £1 million So will my right honourable friend the Prime Minister agree with me that this event simply must go ahead and instruct the relevant departments to work with the APPG for motorsport, Motorsport UK and the promoters to make it happen?
Well, Mr. Speaker, Northern Ireland is a fantastic place to host international events, and I'm delighted that my honourable friend shares my enthusiasm for driving forward prosperity in Northern Ireland. And with tourism, though, being devolved in Northern Ireland, I suggest he engages with Tourism NI on this potential event, and I look forward to hearing how he gets on.
Mr. Speaker, the UK government and His Majesty's loyal opposition refuse to face up to the bleak realities. Brexit is causing weaker growth and a soaring inflation, according to the former governor of the Bank of England. The LSE says EU trade barriers have added an average £250 to household food bills, and Scots fishing chiefs are saying they were sold down the river and scoff at the talk of treaty renegotiation as just spin. With such colossal failures stacking up, and the former PM, who played a leading role in the Leave camp, finally exposed as a serial liar, will the current PM apologise to my constituents in Edinburgh North and Leith?
Mr. Speaker, I'll just point out to the honourable lady, because she's going on about the EU and us leaving it, we have actually grown faster than France and Italy since we left the single market, Mr. Speaker. Our exports have also grown by 25% just since COVID, and as we heard from our honourable friend earlier, that every single international organisation has upgraded their forecast for UK economic growth. That's because we've got the right priorities to drive growth, create jobs and spread opportunity in every part of our United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Hospices across the UK provide quality but also compassionate care to people at the end of their lives, such as Mountbatten Hospice in my constituency, who looked after my office manager Sue Hall when she passed away in March. That's why I and her son-in-law Miles Rogers will be skydiving to raise money on Saturday, and we've raised £6,000 so far. The Prime Minister should feel free to donate to the campaign. He will send his best wishes to all hospice workers across the United Kingdom.
Well, can I join with my honourable friend in first of all wishing, I think it was Miles, good luck this weekend as he raises money, but also join him in paying tribute to all our incredible hospice volunteers and workers across the country. They do a fantastic job in all our constituencies at a very difficult time for families' lives, and we all owe them an enormous amount of thanks.
Jim Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Half of us, sadly, will get cancer at some point during our lives, and half of those with cancer will need radiotherapy treatment. Yet 3.5 million people in this country live in radiotherapy deserts where they don't have close access to the treatment, including my constituency, where my patients living in Westmorland have to travel 3-hour round trips every day to get life-saving treatment. So would the Prime Minister back our proposal for a satellite radiotherapy unit at Westmorland General Hospital in Kendal, and also help support all the other members living in the radiotherapy deserts to bring radiotherapy close to their communities too?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know, like the honourable gentleman, that access to healthcare in rural areas is particularly important given the distances that our rural constituents have to drive. That's why we remain committed to expanding the range of diagnostic services that are available through our proposal to roll out community diagnostic centres, and I think the record-breaking capital budget that we have in the NHS at the moment is delivering that, and I look forward to the department engaging with him on his plans for his local area.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Bank of England are raising interest rates to try to stem spending and therefore preventing inflation being baked into the economy, the same can't be said for those with savings accounts. Would it not be good for people to be encouraged and incentivised to save more? And would my right honourable friend and the Chancellor talk to the industry and encourage them or impel them to actually give a good deal to savers too?
Can I thank my honourable friend, because she raises an excellent point. It is vitally important that savers are treated fairly and the markets are functioning as competitively as we'd expect them to be. I'm pleased to tell her that my honourable friend the Chancellor is meeting with the industry and the banks this Friday to discuss the matter that she's raised, and we'll make sure that she and everyone else gets an update after that.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. I'll let the Chamber play out.
Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Carl Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the 24th of May, in Prime Minister's questions, I asked the Prime Minister why it was that he was forcing the British public to pay the legal bill for Boris Johnson for the Privileges Committee, which is a committee, a parliamentary committee of this House. Now, in his reply, the Prime Minister said there was a convention that former ministers or ministers would have the legal bill covered in scenarios whereby there was requiring lawyers, such as public inquiries, Iraq, contaminated blood scandal, and those types of inquiries. What the Prime Minister did, Mr. Speaker, was suggest that the precedent was already set. It isn't. And following several questions to the Cabinet Office, it transpires that they can give me no single example where a minister or former minister have had the legal bills covered for a parliamentary inquiry. Is effectively extended the precedent. So how, Mr. Speaker, do we get the Prime Minister to come back to the dispatch box, apologise and correct the record? One would have thought, given the events in recent days, the Prime Minister would be keen to get back there to set the record straight.
Can I first of all say I'm very grateful to the Honourable Member for giving notice of the point of order. You will have heard me say before, if ministers and others have different interpretations of events, it's not for the Chair to determine which is correct. That said, and I stress this, that said, if a mistake has been made by a minister, they should of course correct the record. And what I do know, I know very well about the Honourable Member. He may have raised it here, but this is certainly not the end. He will continue to pursue different avenues, and I'm sure that he'll be using the table office to use their good offices for their advice to ensure that he will continue until he gets, I presume, an answer. It may not be what he wants, but I'm sure he will get an answer. So I want to say that the Honourable Member has put on record for us all to know. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Let us move on. We now come to presentation of Bill. Tim Farron.
Higher Education Duty of Care Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday, 24th of November, sir.
Friday the 24th of November. You've been busy. That was a quick one. Right. We now come to the business of the day. We start with a 10-minute rule motion. I call Drew Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to set minimum service standards for the provision of banking and postal services in rural areas, including for the provision of services through physical outlets and for connected purposes. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to discuss an issue that impacts a significant portion of our population, yet too often falls by the wayside. Today, I want to shine a light on the unique challenges faced by our rural communities due to the withdrawal of vital services such as bank branches and post offices. In a world that is hurtling towards digitalisation, we sometimes forget that not every part of our society can adapt to this transition equally. For some, in rural communities, the cloud is more likely to provide rain than provide a platform for accessing essential services. For many in rural areas, banks and post offices offer more than just financial transactions or mail delivery points. They're lifelines, community hubs that connect individuals to the wider social and economic network. The withdrawal of these services is more than an inconvenience, it's a disruption that risks leaving our rural communities high and dry. Our rural communities form the bedrock of Scotland, and I'm sure that others will agree it's the same for their countries too. They're safeguarding our natural resources, producing our food, contributing significantly to our cultural heritage. Yet these communities face increasing marginalisation and neglect. The closure of bank branches and post offices due to economic shifts and technological advancements has left our rural residents feeling overlooked and isolated.
When they were needed to save the banks, they were told in countless adverts the banks would support their communities. But village by village, town by town, those promises have vanished as the corporate priorities have shifted. Similarly, the failure to pay postmasters properly and the steady withdrawal of government services has left many local post offices simply unsustainable and struggling. And don't forget the damage that the Horizon scandal did to the post office network. This issue for our communities transcends financial and communication inconveniences. For older citizens, these services might be their only ways of managing finances or staying connected with loved ones. Local businesses have relied on these outlets for transactions and for receiving supplies. The digital alternatives, often considered to be commonplace in urban areas, are inaccessible due to inadequate internet connectivity or a lack of digital literacy. After all, if an Amazon customer in London can't find a working every return point after trying 4 different locations, what chance have those living in rural areas got? So how do we address this problem? What can we do to ensure our march towards progress doesn't sideline these vital communities? This bill proposes the implementation of legislation to safeguard these physical services in our rural areas. The legislation would mandate a minimum number of physical branches per population, ensuring rural communities have access to these crucial services. While we must certainly invest in improving digital infrastructure and digital literacy programs, the physical presence of these services is indispensable. They provide a sense of community and reassurance that a digital platform simply cannot replicate. Now, incentives for banks and institutions to maintain these services in rural areas could be introduced, such as tax breaks, or indeed shared service models where multiple providers share a facility to lower operational costs. Yet while banking hubs may offer a solution to some, progress on these is, well, Mr. Speaker, glacial at best. And with no legislation to back a community right to back this up, there is no meaningful incentive to provide these everywhere that they are needed. Now, of course, we should also consider innovative delivery models like mobile bank branches or post office vans to ensure accessibility for all, particularly those who might find travel difficult. But these models should, however, supplement, not replace physical services, and they must be designed to foster rural resilience. Services for rural areas must be designed to succeed, not to fail. This is why rural communities require a legal obligation for these services. The ongoing withdrawal of essential services from our rural communities is not just an issue, it is a crisis. We must ensure that our digital transition is inclusive, compassionate and considerate of all of our citizens, regardless of their location. Progress should never come at the expense of leaving anyone behind. Our rural communities deserve the rights to access the same services and facilities as urban communities, and legislation to protect these services gives voice to the needs and rights of our rural communities. The role of rural communities in our nation is indispensable. Preserving our environment, ensuring food security and maintaining cultural heritage, yet these communities are often sidelined, left grappling with dwindling essential services. Bank branches and post offices are not mere conveniences. They are essential lifelines connecting them to the broader social and economic network of our country. The UK government's inaction in addressing these issues has left our rural communities floundering. The onus lies here in Westminster, where the power has been retained. The UK government are the only ones currently capable of taking action, yet concrete measures to halt the decline of these essential services have been sorely lacking. Without intervention, the digital divide will continue to widen, and our rural communities will face increasing marginalisation. It's crucial that the UK government take proactive steps to tackle this issue, or devolve the power to Scotland to do so, for us to do so ourselves.
In Scotland, especially after Brexit, our rural communities are experiencing population decline. Young people are leaving, obviously, to seek new opportunities elsewhere without the new blood we had previously coming in, leaving behind an ageing population. This demographic shift poses its own challenges, from a dwindling workforce to added strains on services for the elderly. The very fabric of these communities, the traditions and practices preserved over generations, are consequently at threat. Now, immigration can play a significant role here by welcoming new Scots from overseas into these areas. We introduce